Make sure it's on.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our review on the Sci-Fi Chronicles for Enter the Dragon. And remember, before we go any further, don't think, feel.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Or he'll slap you on the head.
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, Mr. Ian David Diaz, the Mega Geek, welcome back, sir. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm doing all right. It's like a finger pointing all the way to the moon. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, and we're off. Yeah, he's already started. Blimey. But we've also got what I would like to call as another American legend with us today, and it's Culture Casino. So welcome, sir. Good to see you.
Not Gary.
He's so modest, everybody. He really is.
Thought we were talking about Gary. No, I'm look, this is going to be a lot of fun. This is one of my all-time favorite movies, especially for martial arts. And it's kind of we were talking backstage, and I'm going to spill the beans now and just say it's one of those that I think started off the entire genre of like the new modern action era, right? It was choreographed in a way, and some of the fights we're going to talk about and everything. They really kind of drove every film that followed. And even television shows and all kinds of things. I mean, the way we tell any kind of action-based story is kind of the way this film was structured.
Absolutely. And Gary, welcome back, mate. How you doing?
Thank you very much. This is, like I said, I only saw this film for the very first time last night. So there you go. I was kind of disappointed. I thought, this is a sci-fi fantasy channel. I was disappointed by the fact that there were no actual dragons in it. I kept waiting for the dragons to show up. But I thought, well, okay. You
were looking for the Game of Thrones moment.
I was. I thought, when's the dragon going to enter in this film? It's almost over.
Yeah, but you got an awesome afro in this film, though. Come on,
it's phenomenal.
Wow, that afro's awesome. Do you know what I mean? It's that's a world of its own.
But it doesn't have a giant, slice of cheese cut out of it.
Oh yeah, it doesn't. Or does it have an afro comb stuck in the middle of it?
Don't get us canceled, you guys. We've only been on for like 2 minutes.
I was referring to the Jaguar ad, but
right, that's terrible.
Cultural relevance.
So, I mean, with regards to this film, I mean, this was, and you were touching upon that culture a moment ago about the fact that, the relevance of this film when it came out, it kind of paved the way for other movies and shows. I mean, you had, through the 70s, I think you had like Black Belt Jones with Jim Kelly and
yes, you did.
Golden Needles. And then you had other films like The Man from Hong Kong and Hot Potato, and it kind of moved on from there, really. And I think, when I grew up in the 80s, there were films that were coming out as well that, clearly influenced by this.
Well, if it wasn't for Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan would never have been who he is today, because Golden Harvest was looking for another Bruce Lee, weren't they? And they came across Jackie Chan, but he's very different to Bruce Lee. So, and he's in Enter the Dragon. So he
is actually twice. Yeah, he's got 2 scenes in there. Yeah. And most people probably don't know that, but at the time he was just a stuntman.
Yes, he was.
I thought I thought I saw Jackie Chan in one scene.
Yeah,
is that Jackie Chan?
Yeah.
Well, he said that Bruce Lee hit him on the head when they were doing a fight scene by accident, and he apologized afterwards. So, that's
also a lot of people don't realize that Enter the Dragon was the first film that had an action hero. His muscles were all toned, because after that, obviously Sylvester Stallone and Arnie came on, and they all, when they took their shirt off, it was like, what the hell? So, but Bruce Lee probably the first, wasn't he? Because he was very concerned about how he looked, wasn't he, at the point?
Bolo, the actor that played Bolo, was also very fit. He was one of the few that at the time that was ripped. But and he's in a lot of movies. Most people don't realize how many movies that guy's in. But when you think back on it, I think you're right, Ian. That's 100% correct. I think that was the first appearance of somebody who was just literally carved out of wood.
Yeah,
I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, he was
unbelievable.
totally.
And I think for me, growing up in the 80s as a kid, you know, this was as big a movie that was talked about by kids at school. And
When was it made, John?
This
What
was
year?
73, I think it was. Yeah. And again, you know, at my school,
73.
Kids obsessed about it, and it was effectively, you know, they put it in the same bracket, you know, in that era of Rocky and Rambo, where all the kids were talking about these sort of movies. But it got so obsessed. I remember, you know, in the 80s when the nunchuck became a big thing.
Oh God, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
yeah,
man,
exactly.
See, we were talking backstage. I'm like, that's one of my favorite scenes. It's like,
it's great.
And then he just sits, he just chills.
Yeah.
You
know how many kids got hurt because of that film?
Yeah.
Knocked themselves out.
Yeah.
I had practice. I had practice nunchucka, so they were weighted foam. So
yeah.
How many school nurses is like, oh, here's another one?
Well, at my school, the
bats.
kids, at my school, the kids, they used to take off their belts.
Yeah.
And play as if it was nunchuck. So, you know,
do you know what?
Nurses dealing with multiple lacerations.
Kids, right, John? Other kids,
yeah. I'm still doing it today.
That's right.
Do you know what? Right. So, this Enter the Dragon's very close to my heart, and I tell you why. Because it was the very first film we got on video when video came out. And we had a Betamax machine.
Oh wow!
And so basically, what happens is that we were all fans of Enter the Dragon. I think it was 6 of us at school, and we all put money in a hat to buy, not to rent it, but to buy it. And you know how much it cost? £73. We saved up £73 to buy a brand new copy, a Betamax copy of Enter the Dragon.
Wow.
And that's why I love the film, because I must have worn that tape out. That tape had so much dropout on it after watching it for like millions of times. You know, our friends would come around and we'd watch the film over and over again. Yeah. So it is very, and I know it like the back of my hand, the film. So
I have a question as a newbie. I know that Bruce Lee, this wasn't his first film, although I think, is it correct? It was his last one because he died later on in 73.
Yeah. He'd
already been in other movies. What was it about this one that this became the like pinnacle of
co-American?
Was it Warner Brothers, wasn't it?
It was
Marvel, wasn't it?
It was Warner Brothers and Hong Kong, and I mean that was basically like this culmination of events that came together, and it was very Americanized. So that's why.
Yeah. And I think, you know, talking at the time, the budget was what, $850,000, and it made back what, sort of 90 million worldwide. So
over the years, according to Wikipedia, I mean, it seems like over the years they said it's made close to, in 2024 dollars, like $2 billion.
Wow.
Yeah,
almost, because of the constant re-releases over the decades.
And I would say as well that this film, you know, when you're talking about cultural influences and whatnot, I would say the film, you know, not only was it a great film that everyone was buzzing about, but it also kind of launched the populist, you know, martial arts as popular sport and an art form worldwide, you know, where, you know, people talk about Karate Kid when I was a kid, about the fact that karate studios were opening up across the UK and it became very popular. But this did it in the 70s as well. And I don't know what, you know, Gary and culture, what your thoughts are in the US. Did it have that same impact in the US?
I mean, we had martial arts studios like crazy, and you did end up with karate studios, and you know, and then after like all of his efforts, you've started to see some kung fu, jeet kune do, and things like that.
Yeah.
But, no, you started to see more and more of it. In fact, I think in like a matter of months, you know, of Karate Kid coming out, I think there were like 2 studios that had opened up, you know, a mile apart from each other, close to me. You know, I could literally ride my bike to go there. So, of course, it was.
I remember. Oh, I'm sorry, Culture.
No, please go.
No, I was just gonna say. I remember. I don't know, like Culture, if you were a big comic book fan when you were a kid, but I remember,
Mhm.
like for me, there was always that full page on the back of the comics with the Kung Fu Studio,
Yeah.
with the guy in the pose, and send away this coupon to get like a booklet to teach yourself Kung Fu, or
Yeah.
something like that. And I remember I was thinking about this movie as I was watching it last night. Okay, 73. So I was trying to think, like, because all of you guys had said that this was a real, you know, uh, shift in terms of it really upped the profile of Kung Fu. But I thought the David Carradine show Kung Fu
Mhm.
came out in 72, I think. So that was already on, unless am I wrong?
No, you're right, but here's the thing. He stole that idea. That
No,
was
that's
Bruce Lee's idea.
no, it's not true. That's not
Is it?
true. No, it's one of those stories that have been told that
So
people
so
think
so
it's
Jack
true.
so Jack Wagner was not telling the truth
No,
either?
no. The actual film itself, Dragon,
Oh.
right? The director admitted that he made up a lot of stuff to make the film far more palpable to the audience. So,
For
for
this
instance,
movie.
yeah, no, there's a film called Dragon, which is the Bruce Lee
Oh,
story
okay.
that they made with who's that? Jason Scott Lee played
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee. So the
So you
director wrapped, basically exaggerated certain things that happened in Bruce Lee's life, and one of them was they stole kung fu from him, which isn't true, apparently.
Yeah.
So there you
And
go.
the other thing I was thinking about for comics, I know that one of the long-lived characters, the Shang-Chi,
Oh yeah,
Master
yeah,
of Kung Fu, but
yes,
that also came out in 73. So that was probably um, around. But I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, were the other Bruce Lee movies that he made before this, had they already been released in America, or were they released after this one
no.
because of the
So
popularity
so
of this one?
so Gary, the story goes that Bruce Lee came to America. Everybody thinks Bruce Lee was poor and he came to America and he made his name. That's not true. Bruce Lee's family is quite wealthy, so they sent him to America, and he was, he went to school, he went to college, whatever, and he was teaching. He decided to teach martial arts, whatever. A lot of people didn't like he was teaching. He got into movies, and he starred in Green Hornet.
Green Hornet,
He
yeah.
was very famous for playing Kato. And the problem is that at that moment in time, the Americans wouldn't accept someone like him in the movies. They gave him parts, but they wouldn't accept him. The biggest role he had was playing Kato on the Green Hornet spin-off from Batman, the 60s Batman. So what happened was, when the show got cancelled, he wasn't getting hired. And then apparently these producers tracked him down, because the show Green Hornet was huge in China or Japan, or where it was, and they called it the what is it? They didn't call it the Green Hornet show. They call it the Kato show over there.
Okay.
And then that's how he, and then they said, "I'll come and make films over there." So he took his family and they flew over to, was it Hong Kong, and they started making films over there, and they become cult. And then that's when the Americans got interested in it, and that's
Okay.
how the Enter the Dragon got formed, because that kung fu thing was really getting big. Oh, that kung fu film, we better make a film of it, and then the Americans, put money
But
in.
over in America culture, was this the first big kung fu film that hit big in America?
It was, according to history. Sorry, I answered. I answered. Sorry, pal. Go on. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I would also say as well, I mean, one of the things that I love about this film is, it's got to be the Hall of Mirrors scene, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
That's
it's
wild.
iconic. Yeah, and I think they took inspiration from an Orson Welles film, didn't they, for that?
Iconic poster as well that everyone.
The Man from Shanghai, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I was also going to say that going forward, as a kid in the 80s and on, and I love in my action movies, that mirror scene, would turn up in so many films later on.
Yeah.
It's like, just two as an example, is Tango and Cash and John Wick. They do that.
The John Wick. I think they've done the mirror thing twice now. It's like, it's always impressive, and I think it's got to be one of those moments that I think it just connects back to other films that have used that, and it's constantly reinforced. The actor that played Han, Shikeen, he did such a great job. He was in other films. I'm just trying to remember what they were because I recognize him, but he even in that was probably not in the best shape to be doing those things, but boy did he sell that scene. And those
Oh,
those the dagger claw things were just
Yeah.
phenomenal. I was like,
Yeah,
dang.
Just
he's
that iconic scene
Yeah.
where Bruce Lee gets cut, in the air, and he just stops, and then he goes and licks the blood.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
his
just
voice
iconic.
was dubbed. The guy who played Han. That's not his real voice. It was dubbed by, I don't know who dubbed it.
Well, it
but,
had to be dubbed, right? There's no
Yeah.
way he sounded like that. But
Yeah.
it was so impressive, and the fact that they were willing to do these stunts around and mess with some implements that are very much there to hurt you. I always thought that was really well done.
I mean, let's talk about the cast. John
Mm.
Saxon was pretty good in it. I found. I think
Yeah.
out of the three, I think John Saxon obviously was the guy that could act. Put it that way. But they cast him because they were scared that no one would go and see the film because Bruce Lee's in it. So they got John Saxon in the film just to try and boost the American.
And he knew Kung
audience up
Fu,
there.
obviously, because I mean, he seems like a natural.
Well, I think
And-
he knew. Yeah,
And it
I
was initially it was going to be Roper that was killed in the film, but
Oh, yeah.
John Saxon said not to be killed. He didn't want to
Yes.
be killed, so they changed it to Jim Kelly's Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, for me, all this nonsense we have at the moment, where they talk about, oh, we've got to have diversity in that. You had it here in the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
we've never had an absence of it. It's like, this is always, but what are you talking
Yeah,
about,
I
man?
know.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absolute nonsense. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, I mean, you got Bruce Lee, who is the martial artist and an undercover operative, calm and disciplined, recruited by British intelligence. It's great. Very honorable, wants to avenge his sister. And then you've
That
got
was a good scene.
Roper. It was a very good scene.
With
And
sister.
you've got Roper as well, who's a gambler and a martial artist, and he's a charming, smooth talker. That golf scene is great, where the mafia are coming for the money.
Yeah.
And then you've got, Jim Kelly, who,
Yeah.
this would be his platform to go on and do more movies, because he was just a karate guy, wasn't he, when they found him for this
I
film?
think so. He was running away because he beat the crap out of two policemen, wasn't he?
That's
So,
right.
He had to go.
That's right.
He had to join.
Was he? I don't want to. This is not a cynical question.
Yeah.
I just honestly don't know. Was he added to capitalize on the blaxploitation trend in
No,
the
there
US,
wasn't.
which had been going on for a couple of years by this point?
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know about that. I do know that they had a hard time shooting the film because the language barrier between I don't know is it Hong Kong? Is it Japan?
Hong Kong.
Yeah, hard time trying to shoot and trying to explain to people what was going on.
There was a production assistant, I think they nicknamed her Madeline, that was kind of capable of translating roughly out to try to smooth some of that over. But I mean, there's a lot. Was she a production assistant? She was like literally the person that handled a lot of the nonsense. She was some level of producer. Regardless, she was able to help with that. But it again, and so was Bruce, by the way. But it's just you just have so many different cultures. So and again, you pointed this out, Ian. I mean, we've always had multicultural films. I mean, especially during travel, like adventure films are always multicultural. So it's like it's just nonsense. And look, you can blame modern Hollywood for a lot. Including the idea that there wasn't ever any film with any minority in it, except that you just go back to films like this and you're like, no, they stopped doing it because of the expense. On set location films are hard and expensive. I mean, look at the Bond films, right?
Yeah, they are.
They are incredibly expensive productions, and it's multicultural all over the place.
But
so it's like
that's the thing with this film, right? It was the very first time you saw a polished martial arts movie, because the movies beforehand were coming from Hong Kong, whatever, and they were all shot okay, but they're all like, you can tell that the quality wasn't there. But Enter the Dragon went all out to have the first Hollywood martial arts movie, and it was the first Hollywood martial arts movie. And it's a shame he died before I think he died
6 days before, wasn't it? The Hong Kong premiere, I think it was.
Wow,
And
really?
yeah, I mean, it was such a huge hit, and also it's iconic because everyone had that poster. So 2 posters at the time was iconic. I think it was that one with him, and also Farrah Fawcett Majors in the red bikini. So if you had those 2 in your bedroom, you were up to date. So yeah, it was a very iconic. There's so many iconic moments in that film that that other films copied. Again, John says the mirror stuff, it's copied. I mean, I think they did that by putting the camera low, didn't they, looking up, so that you wouldn't get the reflection of the camera in the mirrors. I think that's what they did. But I mean, it's one of the best martial arts film in the world.
I'm guessing that one of the 3 of you, at least one of the 3 of you, if you've ever gone like to a carnival or a mirror house, you've probably tried to practice the kung fu moves inside the mirror.
Yeah. Still doing it, mate. Still doing it.
Without the spear on the wall.
I don't remember that. I don't remember any of that. I was never in Circus in Vegas and Hall of Mirrors. I never did any of that.
But when I was a kid, right, we used to go, me and my friends, we used to go down the common, Clapham Common or the park, and we used to like pretend to be Bruce Lee and try and beat the crap out of each other and stuff like that. So
you know what? I'm not surprised at all, mate.
What? You never used to do that? Come on.
He still does it. He still does it. I was actually really surprised at how few scenes. I think 3. I was trying to remember that this morning. 3, I think. Only 3 scenes that Bruce Lee and John Saxon share.
Yeah.
The one thing at the dinner where they have the little talk at the dinner, because they don't interact on the boat coming over.
No.
At the dinner, where John Saxon refuses to fight him out on the lawn.
Yeah.
And then at the end where they kind of look at each other and do that. And I thought, and those are the 2 top billed stars. I thought, well, that was interesting.
Well, all 3 of them, they had their credits like Jaws, didn't they? You had Roy Schneider, what's his name, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss all in a line, didn't you? And Richard Dreyfuss at the bottom. And Enter the Dragon, it had who was first? I think it was Bruce Lee, John Saxon, and what's his name? Jim Kelly.
No, the Jim Kelly was actually an introducing at the very end.
Oh, of course, you're right.
Because I kept waiting, wait a minute, when's Jim Kelly going to be in the credits? And he's crossing the street, and it says introducing Jim Kelly as whoever. Williams.
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But that cracking soundtrack from I can't even pronounce his name. Was it Lauren?
He's a TV guy. Culture knows that there's probably so many iconic TV themes from Lalo Schifrin. Like, didn't he do Impossible theme?
He did Mission Impossible. Yes,
and he did like I think the
Bullet. He did Bullet.
He did the first season, the best version of the theme, the initial season 1 of Starsky and Hutch, which was the best theme of the 4. So he's Lalo Schifrin is just a giant.
Yeah, it's an iconic theme as well from Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon is a very iconic movie. Again, because we didn't have the internet and things weren't accessible. When you saw a poster of Bruce Lee, when you're going into HMV or something like that, you kind of wanted it because it was the only inroad into something like that to make you remember the film. And then when VHSs came out, that was it. Everybody was hitting the stores and buying martial arts film left, right, and center.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah.
I mean, and that dining scene is well directed as well, isn't it? Where the colors and everything, I think, looks great today.
I think that was the first scene they shot, I think.
Oh, was it really? Yeah, I think it's absolutely wonderful. But I was going to say to you both as well, all 3 of you, sorry. I was going to say that that bit on the boat at the beginning, where he puts the other fighter in the back of out the back. I watching the documentary on it. They were saying that they reckon that there'd been beef between him and Bruce Lee before that scene.
Yeah.
So apparently that was the case, and they wanted to pull him in further, but quicker, but Bruce Lee wouldn't allow it. And that guy who was in the boat, he said, he gave it to a kid, and next thing you know, the water's coming
in the boat. Yeah.
How insane do you have to be to get into a beef with Bruce Lee?
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that
that's just
the thing is though, in those days, martial artists were very competitive against one another. I remember. I
Yeah.
mean, I was part of my was it when I was a kid? I was part of martial arts club, and we were competitive through the karate club, which was down the road. Do you know what I mean? It's very competitive.
That's a movie in itself, isn't it? That Ian David Diaz's rivalry of a local
No,
karate club. You know, it's just,
but it's true that every time if you were into martial arts, every time you met someone and they said they were they were karate and you were kung fu, you'd go, you kind of look down at them. That's karate.
well,
Do you know what I mean? And people were like,
I
and vice
wanna
versa as well.
I want to ask Culture about something that he mentioned at the top of the stream, but I want to kind of get more of his thoughts on it. I know you said, and I probably agree, that you said this was the influence for all the modern day action films.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, though, it's centered around a martial artist slash athlete slash actor
Mhm.
who has such a non-replicatable style. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, how do you make this the template for modern horror movies when the person at the center, you can't really, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but it's also okay. So you
Not
have
that
to
I
look
was
at it this way.
disagreeing with you. I mean, I
No, no,
think
no,
you're
no, no,
right.
no.
I just
No,
wanted to.
but it's also because, and again, it's they're not influenced by his style. First of all, you cannot replicate his quickness. He was the absolute fastest human being I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You,
it's
you,
very
you
fast.
I mean, he also could outthink you, which is something else. Like if you were going to fight him or you were going to train with him, you had to know that this guy will always beat you. You don't have the physical ability to keep up, which is fine. But at the same time, it was because they were making something that was more realistically based, right? There's you're not getting the superhero kind of kung fu stuff that had been out there before, and you weren't getting that. You were still getting that later. I mean, a lot of the wire work stuff and everything was still happening, but this was more reality based fighting. This was more like, and they didn't have to be so explicit, right? I mean, you could tell he ended people without seeing him end people.
Yeah.
So but it was the way the film was structured and the fact that you were going on a journey with really this is literally a hero's journey film, and it's that same structure, right? So everything that came afterwards was like, here's a piece of tragedy, this is an additional driver for the plot, and as you moved through it, it was like levels of a game. Well, every single film after that kind of was structured that way, whether it be Sylvester Stallone's action turns with Commando and obviously First Blood and things like that.
Yeah.
But primarily when you got to the Schwarzenegger stuff, it was even more pronounced. You could almost follow beat for beat some of those the influences of that film in those films. You could see them.
Yeah.
So the celebration of successes, not as explicitly as obviously the American versions are with our one-liners and stuff like that, but you could actually see that along the way.
Yeah.
And but mostly just the way this films were structured, as far as this is how we progress through this plot, and it's done in so many of those 80s, those classic 80s action movies, that it's just kind of it just always seems quite obvious to me. Even the character development is roughly the same in a lot of those. So
but they'd never seen anything like it, because I remember reading about the making of when they first started shooting Enter the Dragon, and Bruce Lee was choreographing fights. The stunt guys had never seen anything like what he was doing, obviously because he just came back from Hong Kong, but it being a huge success in Hong Kong. And the way they do fights is obviously completely different to the way the Americans. The Americans are all insured up to the hilt, aren't they? But in Hong Kong, they were like, try something, and if they break their neck, they break their neck. Do you know what I mean? The film's not liable.
and that carried forward into everybody else's films that came afterwards, because we were talking about the fact early on that Jackie Chan was in this film. You get to see him twice in this film. And he was a stuntman at the time, and that guy is never insured because he does insanely dumb stuff. I mean, do you know that scene where what was it? Rumble.
Which
The,
one?
the first one, the first
Rumble
Rumble
in the
film,
Bronx.
Rumble in the
The
Bronx.
Bronx, yeah, the first
Was
one.
it was wait, is that the one, or was one of the ones where he's jumping onto a hovercraft? He broke his leg,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's not Rumble in the Bronx.
and he
Yeah,
put a cast on his leg and
yeah,
finished the film.
yeah,
He
yeah.
couldn't afford to
It's
stop.
No,
It's just
Wow.
insane,
there's
isn't it? And
there's one police story where
Yeah,
basically this bus was going past, so we had to smash through the window and jump on the bus, right? But so they had two windows. They had the breaky one and the real one, and the bus was going, and he jumped through the wrong window, smashed through the real glass in the bus.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Well,
mean, you know, it's like wow.
well, it's like in this one as well, isn't it? You know, because like Bob Wall, you know, O'Hara,
Bob
in it,
Wall, oh my god,
he
yeah.
he Bruce Lee accidentally cut him because where they
Mm.
were using those bottles,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they it was the wrong one, so he cut his hand with it, didn't he? You know, in this film, but
Oh,
it-
okay.
Yeah,
but
Bob
that's a
Wall.
great scene.
Yeah, Bob Wall's. I think he was a karate champion, wasn't he? At the time, he's very successful at that, and I think he starred in Way of the Dragon before they put him in Enter the Dragon. I think so. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
friends with Bruce. Yeah.
And I would also say,
One of the
guys,
funniest shots for me in this that I laughed out loud
Mm.
is, and I'm sure it was like a Bruce Lee bit of business, when he throws the snake into the control room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he's just, and then the next time it flashes him, he's just sitting in the corner like this, waiting for the snake to do its business, you know, and the guys to the, and like he's just going, yeah, yeah, okay. And then they all panic and smash out the glass and everything. And, you know, I mean,
And while
it
he's
was
sending a
good.
message, and while he's sending a coded message, he sees the snake and he puts his foot on the snake so it
Yeah.
doesn't move. He's like, he's not even bothered about the snake. Not bothered about
And I
it.
realized in the last scene where I guess Williams gets killed, how much of this movie, unintentionally maybe, is just like a lift from the plot of Dr. No.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
going
Well,
into the fortress island, and he even
Yeah.
has an iron hand. I thought, this
Yeah.
is Dr. No.
That's actually one of the things that a lot of people comment about, is that it's very much a Dr. No-esque character. It looked because of you know, Han's appearance, right? So yeah, no, I think that observation's like top of mind for a lot of people when they see this the first time.
Yeah.
It's like it's funny. I mean, you know, there's a difference between you know, drugs and human, you know, trafficking operations, which is what this film is, you know, oriented around. But it's a little bit different than the plot of Doctor No in that way, in that regard. But I still love it.
Yeah.
What's
it-
interesting?
Yeah.
What's
by the
interesting
way,
okay.
but no, real quick, I'm sorry. By the way, we were talking about Lalo Schifrin, right?
Yeah.
I had to go look it up because I wasn't going to say it until I looked it up. But he actually also did the score for Rush Hour.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, wait a minute, he did a bunch of movies too, and I think he did Rush
Yeah.
Hour. And that has, who is that in that?
Brilliant.
Who's in that film?
There you go.
Well, what's
Yeah,
interesting?
it's funny that, isn't it?
Can you
about
hear the words that are coming out of my mouth? Yeah.
Yeah.
what's interesting about Han is that there's that bit in it where he takes he's got a gloved hand, right? And he takes his gloved hand. You can see it's all rigid because it's like a false hand. But then there's a shot where somebody offers him some grapes, and his hand bends and he takes a grape and he eats it. It's like, well, if it's false, you wouldn't.
I would have loved a shot in Han's office where he has a display case with like 20 detachable,
I know, it would've been
you know,
cool, right?
different accessories that he can go in and, you know, a
it's
back
funny.
scratcher and this, that, and the other thing. Just to,
Okay, now we're on to Austin Powers, but yes.
Well, I mean, the Jim Kelly, you know, Williams's death is a really great scene as well.
It is.
You know, Han, you know, as an antagonist, it shows just how ruthless and how powerful he is as well. You know, just, you know, and they don't hold back in that one. And I think it plays really well where they're going into the, you know, the prostitute drug den and they're all laughing and he's getting the hell beaten out of him.
Yeah.
It's another great scene, you know, and just seeing him hanging later on, you know, all chained up as he's about to be, you know, dropped into the water. You know, it's great. But this, it's, you know, I mean, I might watch
it's
it
very
again,
Bond.
you
It's
know?
very Bondian. Yeah.
It is. I mean, what's interesting as well is that Bruce Lee was very nervous when he was making the film, because I watched the making of. He was incredibly nervous. He was nervous about actually pronouncing words because he'd been in Hong Kong for a long time before he got dragged back to America, and he was very nervous about his first American movies and the film that he was leading. So he was very nervous, but also the fact that a lot of people challenged him on set, according to one of the books that was written about the making of, and he taught some kid a lesson or something like that. I can't remember what the story was behind there, but again, right, even the making of is iconic. It's like, just like the film, right? So yeah.
Well, I think they only confirmed that there were 2 actual fights that he took on, but I mean, he wasn't a combatant. He never went to competition, as I think Ian said earlier. He was just, a regular bloke.
He wanted to teach people different styles. He didn't stick to one style. There was loads of different styles. Even when I think when Chuck Norris was talking about him, he said that he was so fascinated about, because Chuck Norris was a world champion, a karate world champion when he did, I think, Way of the Dragon. And so when he was talking to him, he was trying to learn off Chuck Norris as well, because he believed that martial arts is not one set of rules. You need to adapt to all of the martial arts. That's what he believed. So there you go.
It's very well done. I think, for me, again, I never get tired of watching it. I think I've lost count how many times I've watched it over the years. And like you were saying earlier, Culture, that nunchuck scene, it's when I first saw that, as a kid, and I was just like, that was it, and I was like, right, where's my brother?
I
want to act this one out.
I'm gonna go get 2 sticks and a chain. Or if I don't have a rope. I got a rope. I got a piece of rope.
And I love it when the fighters, after his exhibition, put up their hands like this, and he knows what's going on, and he does the whole jump over it.
Yeah.
That's
in the beginning.
Right, the beginning. That's the beginning. Yeah, that's the first scene. Yeah. I love that. I mean, that scene, and then the scene that follows is the teaching scene, right, with the kid. I was like, that is so good, and that's just fresh after having a conversation with the master.
That was the director's cut, though. That the bit with the master wasn't in the original version.
No. Oh well, I guess that's what I've got though. But it's just but that scene where he hops over the top instead of going underneath, it was so good.
And like you say, with the student as well, just all of that.
All right, so here's another naive question. Explain the concept of fighting without fighting to me.
Well,
in the boat at the back.
Yeah, he just did it, didn't he? He basically.
So I thought that was like his maybe personal philosophy.
No.
He just conned him to the.
All right. Like, so I was looking for deep meaning. I'm looking for deep meaning in this. So okay.
Yeah, there is no deep meaning in Enter the Dragon.
And my second question is, and this is a serious question: did George Lucas get the? Is this where he got the name Han Solo from Mr. Han in this movie?
I don't know. I don't. All right.
Only because this is such an iconic movie, and George Lucas would have known this movie.
Yeah, I think, but again, I do love, like you were saying about Dr. No earlier, I love the fact this guy's got his own secret layer. But, you've got British intelligence. Yeah, the British intelligence, for some reason, they can't raid it, because it's just out. Part of it's in their jurisdiction, but part of it isn't.
But you know how many versions of Enter the Dragon came out? So when we brought it, it was 4:3. The aspect ratio was 4:3, right? And then they re-released it again, and it was in widescreen. So we were really surprised how the bit where he's talking to the British guy. I could see the rest of the sofa. It was like, oh my gosh, there's we can see the rest of the sofa. Do you know what I mean? And then they brought it out in 2, 3, whatever it was shot, and it's glorious what they did.
I mean, guys, I don't know about you, but when I watched it in the 80s, and I went to the cinema. You had cinemas back then.
You saw it in the cinema?
Yeah, because they the local sort of town ones put them on. And I was going to say, back in the 80s, you didn't have like massive, you had the big Odeon cinemas and chains like that, but you had the small town ones. And I used to go in and sit down, and all it was, they didn't have a screen as such. It was just a painted white wall.
Oh,
with,
really?
with Pebble Dash. Remember the 80s sort of Pebble Dash look?
Yeah.
So they would just display the film onto the wall.
Oh,
that
wow.
was the cinema. So I would watch that. You know, I watched this in there, and it's great. I miss those days of just like, you know, someone's clearly converted their house into a local cinema.
In the 80s,
Wow.
they should have. In the 80s, they should have put this on a double bill with Karate Kid. That would have been.
I went to see.
great.
So we got Into the Dragon. I remember they screened it because where I lived, they had a independent cinema called the Ruby, and they used to screen films every Saturday night. And it was a big black community where I lived. Not anymore though. But they used to go to the cinema and scream at the screen and throw things and stuff like that. And people were smoking whatever they were smoking. You know, sometimes you get high just sitting next to somebody. It was ridiculous. but they showed Enter the Dragon, and was Enter the Dragon. I think it was Way of the Dragon as well. And could you imagine watching those films and with all the specs and the film weaving up and down, because it was real film, right? And then I remember one time, because we saw Enter the Dragon, even though we had it on Betamax, we saw it twice in this flea pit cinema. I remember it breaking down when Bruce Lee got the chucks and he went like that, and then suddenly the film went. You should have heard the scream of the audience. They were so upset, right? And the manager came out and he goes, "Don't worry, we're fixing it now. We're fixing it now." And people were just screaming at him and stuff like that. So that's what I remember.
The manager,
Gary's gone.
Oh,
Gary's
gone. Oh, hello.
He's gone. He's gone into a time eddy.
Are you back, Gary? Oh no, he's not.
Oh yeah, he's back. He's back.
Yeah,
you're back. You're back.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I was also just really quickly. I just want to say that one of the scenes I thought was great, that I wish they would have done more of it in the movie. I love the scene where his three bodyguards throw the little things and skewer like the apple and those other things. I thought they should have come back at some point and had some kind of showdown with either Bruce Lee or something, because they were great and they didn't do anything else with them. But that was a great scene.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
So with regards to this film, guys, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this, because as we said, this led to a lot more films in the 70s in this style.
Right.
Do you think that it was starting to wane in the 80s? And then you had, like we were talking earlier, you had Karate Kid came out, and it, you know, that suddenly exploded the martial art sort of genre again, and sort of re-energized it. You know, what are our thoughts on that? Do you think it was waning as we got into the sort of early 80s?
Yeah, but I think Hollywood always has a sort of a cycle. It's always cyclical from genre to genre. I think I think the only films that could have a proper reign forever would be like westerns, but we haven't had a proper set of westerns in a long time.
That's true.
But and again, it's all you know, a man and a gun kind of a, you know, wandering hero.
That's what took over, isn't it? I mean, when Enter the Dragon came out, I think the Americans they did try their versions of martial arts movies with different actors and stuff like that. Didn't really take off. And and when he died in Hong Kong, they were looking for people to replace him. Right. They even had a guy named Bruce Lee, didn't they? That looked a bit like him, and they were shooting films with him. And then Jackie Chan was born at that moment in time and stuff like that. But it kind of in America kind of waned off. And then we were introduced to men with guns, with muscles. So, and then that came on, and then we had Karate Kid, which didn't revitalize the thing, but it did spawn a lot of other movies.
But the thing about it, especially in the 70s in the US, and Culture, please correct me if I'm mistaken, is that especially in the 70s, there were a lot of kind of ongoing concurrent like subgenres. Like blaxploitation kind of started really kind of in the late 60s, but then it went through like 74, 75. Concurrently with this movie started the kind of in America, the kung fu phase, so much that, you know, Live and Let Die was influenced by the kung fu. Man with the Golden Gun was. Live and Let Die was the blaxploitation Bond.
Yep.
Man with the Golden Gun was the kung fu Bond. I mean, we had then the subgenres in America of the disaster movies for a few years, which started with the Poseidon Adventure, and there was all these kind of like concurrent subgenres. But then by the time that Star Wars came in 77, that kind of wiped everything away, and all the studios were really jumping on, you know, the sci-fi.
Well, we had great sci-fi from that point forward. I think everything you're saying is accurate. Well, everything that you kind of broke down. I think the apex of blaxploitation was 71. That would have been Shaft. You know, and from that point forward, you know, they were always looking for that kind of a film. But, you know, eventually you see enough of that same type of film because they just kept making the same film from that point forward. And that's what kind of kills a genre. I mean, look at what's happened with superhero films. They basically made a money making machine. They have they built a money printer. They could print money. Yeah. And they forgot how to use it. They turn it into something else. Well, we want to print a different color on this bill, or we want to put a different name on this bill or a different portrait on this bill and still call it a $10 bill. You know, and in the case of like everything changing to female, I think largely this is, I mean, you can point the finger for all of this breaking at the same time at Disney. Because they controlled so much that they thought that they could leverage their hand in everything that they kind of controlled. And I think that's what's done that. But no, you're 100% right. I mean, you had a bunch of subgenres, you had a bunch of things that were kind of a mix, an amalgamation of everything else. I mean, you pointing at the Bond movies is a perfect thing. You can see the passage of time and what was popular at the time in every Bond movie you see. That's why we ended up with James Bourne. With Casino Royale, right? Because, you know, it was the parkour and everything else that was popular at the time. So the lead off scene there is parkour and other stuff and shaky cam. I hate
the beginning of Quantum of Solace. The first 10 minutes is shaky cam.
And I'm like, why are you Jason Bourning James Bond? This is unnecessary.
You know,
we have one of those.
Hong Kong movies was a huge influence.
Oh yeah.
In fact, Hong Kong movies are very original because when you think about it, Hong Kong movies introduces the wire work, which the Americans copied. The the shoot 'em up with gun fu, which was John Woo for Hong Kong, and also the style which Tarantino copied for Reservoir Dogs and the Kill Bill thing. So Hong Kong is responsible for a lot of things that the Americans copied in their movies, you know. So it's no surprise that Bruce Lee came from Hong Kong and he was a big star in Hong Kong. Do you know what I mean? So the Americans are closely looking at other countries to see what they can steal, even today.
You mean homage, Ian? You don't mean steal.
No, they're stealing it. It's grand theft, dude. It's like
it is.
I mean, gosh, when you look at, let's say, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, how many films after that the Americans tried to remake that? Did I say that right?
Right. Well, you even look at that atrocity of Shang-Chi when that came out from Disney, and they were literally riffing off of it, weren't they?
It
was awful.
Well, the petals, like stepping on or leaves, I guess.
And
all that.
Exactly.
Why are you stealing this? I'm like, look.
I know, it's crazy.
And again, I feel like Ian's 100% right. I mean, the number of films and concepts and ideas that came out of Hong Kong, it's unbelievable. You know?
I mean, John Wick is a prime example of gun fu because everybody thinks John Wick was the first to do gun fu, but it wasn't. It was John Woo. If you watch some of John Woo films, that's what he was doing.
Well, what do you think? Where do you think John Woo started the gun fu thing?
A lot of people think that is original.
No, I believe you. I just, I think what would be the defining movie of that though? I'm trying to think because he made a lot of stuff.
John Woo. It would be what was that one where he was in the hospital and there was a big shootout in the hospital. What was that one called?
Hard Boiled was a
Hard
good
Boiled
one.
was the one that introduced. You know,
Yeah.
the guy was shooting and he didn't run out of bullets. He just kept shooting. Do you know what I mean? So I think,
but you know, I think you know, when I look at this film as well, I mean, this was the film that set me off. Again, Karate Kid, and we will be doing reviews of Karate Kid, by the way, because I adore Karate Kids. But this film also led me on to, you know, that's why in the 80s I was a fan of, you know, Bloodsport and Kickboxer. You know, these films with Van Damme that came along, it was inspired by what they did in this film, you know, and I mean,
and even Steven Seagal films are, you know, I mean, the guy's an idiot, but you know, it's like he made a lot of money doing what he does.
Steven, if you're listening, he's not speaking for us.
Well, I mean, the later ones where he's really fat and he waddles.
That's what I'm saying.
He clearly can't be bothered to fight.
What was that? So what was those low budget ones they used to have? Enter the Ninja. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
They had,
exactly.
and there was loads. They made loads of those films, trying to cash in on the. But none of them could had the class of Enter the Dragon. If you look at Enter the Dragon, very polished movie.
Yeah.
And I think they tried to recapture it in the sort of later 80s as well, where you had Hollywood movies with Cynthia Rothrock and people like that who were doing the movies, you know. So
Brigitte Nielsen.
definitely. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that Cannonball Run was produced by Golden Harvest. And the reason why Cannonball Run was made was because they were trying to promote Jackie Chan in America. And that was one of the reasons why Golden Harvest decided to do Cannonball Run. So that's why he's in both of them. And so, but they didn't. I think his very first film was called The Enforcer in America. It didn't do very well. And then he went back to Hong Kong and then he became a success. Then he came back to America. And you know what I mean? It's like Bruce Lee did that, didn't he? He was in America, went over and then he came back.
The only thing I remember about Cannonball Run is Adrienne Barbeau and the other woman in the spandex.
Oh, those two, those two, yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some things make more of an impression than others. I mean, let's just be honest. I will say, Stephen, I think you're still very talented at 72. I don't want you to visit my house. Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is the point that would be great, where the door behind Ian opens and there's Steven Seagal standing there.
Yeah, but he can't fit through the door, so he's safe.
Yeah, I'm safe. He can't get through the door. Yes.
Anyway, but think about it. I mean, we talked about Seagal and Van Damme and everybody that followed along. I still think Van Damme made the one of the greatest films ever made.
Which one?
And he did it with a basketball star.
My
Double Team.
No.
Dude.
I thought for one worrying moment, mate, I thought you were going to go down Street Fighter route at one point.
But you know, Van Damme is probably the nicest out of the three. You had three, right? You had Steven Seagal, him, and who was the other one? The guy that was in Rocky, the Russian. What's his name?
Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph
Lundgren.
Right?
He recently announced he's cancer free. He's been fighting a 9-year battle with cancer and still acting, because he was.
I will break you.
Yeah.
He was in that absolutely terrible action film that they've made, I guess, several copies of now. The Enforcers or or whatever. What is that called?
Expendables.
Expendables, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They're so memorable. I can forget their name. But yeah, it's just but yeah, I was like, okay, well, he's been in a few of those. So but it's just I'm glad he's healthy. But the other people that we always forget, and we mentioned before because he comes from the same era as Bruce, is Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris,
he's a force of nature, because the guy it's all medium. It doesn't matter what it is. He's going to be a fitness guru. Okay, I'm going to sell you this really weird workout machine, or I'm this TV star. I'm Walker, Texas Ranger, invented a whole genre. Or really, I stole a whole genre and just made it my own. And then he did he did so many different films. I mean, think
He
about it.
did.
I mean,
I watched Delta Force the other day, you know, for the
Yeah.
first time in ages.
But
you know.
Yeah, he was in all those. What was it?
Canon.
Culture, was it Canon or Golan
Canon,
Globus?
Canon,
he
yeah,
was
Canon
Canon.
films,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was the Canon guy.
But
yeah,
that-
and again, it's so funny. Just you guys bring up these great composers, and I can't believe how many. I looked it up because I was like, yeah, Lalo
Yeah.
Schifrin. I'm
Yeah.
looking at all these things. I'm like, good gravy, Dirty Harry, the
Yeah,
Cincinnati
Dirty
Yeah.
Harry. Yeah.
Amityville Horror, Cool
Yes.
Hand Luke. I mean,
Yeah.
he and Clint must be pals, but he's 1,000 years old. He's not even dead yet. He's one of the
No, he's not. It's not.
he's one of the few people that are still alive from Enter the Dragon. There's not very many. They're mostly dead.
No, yeah, that is a shame, really.
And-
The thing about Chuck Norris is I really like Chuck Norris as a person because I've heard him speak and interviewed, and so he comes across as a really nice person. And it was him out of everybody that basically didn't make it that big. Yes, he had Texas, the TV show,
Texas
which
Ranger,
ran
yeah.
for I don't know 7 years,
1,000
whatever.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000 years. It's still playing. But the problem with him is that nobody really, after his first few films, because they really wanted to make him big. So after his first few films, nobody wanted to hire him, and then Cannon came along, and he decided to do those films, and that was kind of the death of his career, really, until he got Texas thing, didn't he?
Texas
So,
Ranger, yeah.
yeah, it's a shame,
I
really.
I still enjoy Chuck Norris, the Cannon movies. Which was the one?
Was it Missing in
Which was
Action?
the-
Were those his?
Yes, that was
Yeah. Which was the one that he did? It was Invasion USA. That was it.
yeah, that was
wasn't it?
Cannon.
You
That
know,
was Cannon. Yeah,
yeah, and that was just like so OTT. It was brilliant. You know, I love it when they go OTT.
And we should tell
in these
people that we
movies.
will be reviewing every episode of Walker Texas Ranger here.
Oh,
on
God,
this
no.
channel.
I don't know if I have that many years left. To be
Yeah.
fair. Just saying.
But I mean, you know, again, when you're talking about this film,
Yeah.
do you guys think we'll ever see this type of film again?
I hope so.
You know, yeah,
Well,
same
I do
here.
hope so.
let me say it. Let me respond a different way. I don't know that you'll ever see this type of film again, but I think you've seen iterations of this before. Because if as we talk about films that are kind of distinctive for their era or in their genre or whatever, I think you can see that it was something special because it had all of these people in it that would go on to define other films within a given genre. So, we talk about Bolo, right? He went on to be in dozens and dozens of films, including some stuff with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah. And so, but you go through all these people. Jackie Chan was in this. You just start to point out these people that go on to do all these other things. Well, there are other films like that that kind of like they are that special because they had all of this in it, and these people go on to do all these other things. So when we look at films, we have to look at it from that perspective as well. And I think oftentimes we'll say, well, this film inspired all this other stuff, and that's true. But it's the people also that are in these films that go on to have these parallel careers, perhaps, or whatever. But they, that was the point, that they had something special came together. Those people go on to chase that same moment for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Chuck Norris. He's very good friends with Bruce Lee. They trained together and all of that. So of course he was going to go on to do, what he was going to do. It's crazy. And you think how many films Jackie Chan was in with Bruce Lee? It was many, because of they were just clicking out films like crazy in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And he was just one of the go-to stuntmen at the time. So you just think of it that way. And like I say, I'm one of those big picture guys, especially when it comes to entertainment, but most particularly when it comes to business. But if you just step back and look at it like, wow, who was in that? Who did that? Right? I just had another amazing moment going through Schifrin's career, going, oh my gosh, he's involved in all this stuff. And again, I mean, you remember him for certain themes from certain shows or even a film, but when you drill down into it, you're like, I didn't know he did that. I didn't know he did that. And it's just like, so you have to look at it broader and say, this is a culmination of these people being together. That's what makes it great.
Yeah.
And then I think Enter the Dragon is one of those types of films. You'll have the occasional outlier that it'll be like a one and done, so one hit wonder, whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, the things that are extra special seem to be a culmination of talent that you'll never see again, or if you do,
No.
it's broken in a way. But
That's true.
I think that this is one of those. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think that's
true.
why it's special.
And John, you know that if this movie came out today and was the success that it was,
Be a trans woman.
we'd be getting young Lee prequels. We'd be getting
Christine Lee.
We'd be getting Bolo spin-offs like Venom.
Yeah.
It would be like young Bolo, things like that. They'd figure out a way to just parse out and bleed this movie dry the way that they do.
The antagonist would have blue hair, of a half.
Talking about Larry Schifrin, whatever how you pronounce his name, he implemented Bruce Lee's scream into the theme. Because when you see that first shot, so it goes, it plays the first few beats, and then you hear Bruce Lee scream, and then it goes into the rest of the theme. He must have went through thousands of screams just to get that one so right. It's incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. What a composer.
I think also there's a couple of things as well. We're talking, for me saying about will we ever see the like again of this type of film? But we're now in an era where you've got a Hollywood now where they're completely risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be 100% assured that this is going to be a winner. And this is why they're mining franchises, because they're scared to take risks on a lot of stuff now. But you've also got I don't think you see many movie stars anymore that develop like Bruce Lee did, and he became iconic. You don't have that anymore. You kind of have almost what I call the studio actor who is just put into every single or as many films as they can get that person in. It's like Disney. Their company, they always have a similar kind of person that ends up in all of their films.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It really is.
You mean like Pedro?
Yeah, you like everything. Pedro. Oh.
Everything. He's in everything. So it's like, let's get Pedro.
You mean we're not going to get Ryan Reynolds in Enter the Dragon 2?
Yeah.
But
that actually would work.
The last martial arts film that was made, and it wasn't even an American film, it was shot in Thailand, was The Raid. The Raid 2. Was it Raid 1, 2, and 3? Yeah. That was the last big martial arts thing. And it seems like America is not so much into it. But yeah, you're right. They should consider making one, Hollywood, like a really good one, because again, right, Hollywood, it's far more easier to use guns than to have someone physically, capable of doing what Bruce Lee did and what I in The Raid does as well.
Everything now is test. I mean, Culture covers this every day on this channel. I mean, everything now is like test marketed to death. Yeah. It's all done by committee. Every single executive has to have input. And this one, I imagine the director just handed everything over to not Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, and said, you choreograph everything and whatever you do is fine. Yeah. And you couldn't have that kind of committee mentality. This movie would have been totally different with that kind of.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Gary? Gary's 100% right in a way that I think we don't understand it, because if you look at a film, and this is completely unrelated to what we're talking about, but if you look at what Disney has done with Snow White, right? That's a film by committee, and that thing has been tested and tested and tested and tested and tested. Do you know how much money they've spent on that movie?
A lot.
It's got to be over 500 mil, isn't it?
You're getting darn close to $500 million, and it's because there's too many cooks in this kitchen. Mm-hmm. You're 100% right, and you're right. Being able to hand it over to a visionary, a creator, a producer, a director, somebody who saw this, right? It's like when you had proper showrunners, right? When you had proper writers. We don't have any of that anymore, because they go into a room and they're like, well, what idea can we steal, and how can we mash it with this other idea that we stole? And it's like having an original idea.
I also think Culture, we are in a time now as well where you've got, like you say, a writer's room where everybody has to think the same way to get in there. Yeah. And the whole thing, we were talking yesterday about this, but the whole you know, the whole reason you got great stuff is because there was a clash.
Yeah.
You know, people disagreed on things and it made
Yeah.
something great. You know, now they all go in a room, their ideology is exactly the same for all of them that sat in that room. So they all agree pretty much most of the time on what they want to do. So you don't have that creative tension that creates something fantastic.
Honestly, the only filmmaker that pops to mind that I think it seems like is allowed to just kind of do whatever he wants right now is Christopher Nolan. They just kind of allow him to do whatever, let it be his vision, you know, without mucking around with it. I'm sure there's more, but that's the only one that
I will allow Nolan to do anything he wants, Gary, except for sound design, because he sucks at that.
I want him to do a 60s era Bond. That's what I want Nolan to do.
Maybe he could do. What if Christopher Nolan said, "I want to do something like Enter the Dragon"? Seriously.
Oh, he could do it. Oh, he could do it. He's actually working. Okay, so his secret film, I believe. I have no inside information or anything, but in one of actually more than one of the interviews that he conducted, he said, "I want to make a horror film."
Right.
So I believe he's making a vampire film.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Wow.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the few things he hasn't done. I mean,
it's called Blade.
Well, but if he did do a 60s Bond, that would be
he would be
astonishing.
great. Well, look, he understands the period, right? He understands period pieces, and as Oppenheimer proves it. So you can look. He looks at eras. He looks forward. He looks back. He can see it. You know, that's how many guys are there left like that, or ladies even? How many? There's not many.
No,
I've always said this. They should hand the James Bond film over to Spielberg and John Williams. Spielberg always wanted to make a James Bond film.
But he's not British. You guys are
no. They've given it to an Australian directed James Bond.
Well, they're kind of sort of British. They're like discount British down there. I'm kidding, my friends. I'm kidding.
But they should hand it. They should literally. I reckon Spielberg would do a really good job, and with John Williams' music, I think it would be just awesome. That's what they should do now. Just give it over to Spielberg to do at least one.
But I mean, I'm going to side with Gary and say I think Nolan would make a great Bond film.
And you know who I think should be if you know who I think could do it if Christopher Nolan wanted to do it. You know who I think should be Bond?
Who?
Pierce Brosnan. I think Pierce Brosnan now could still do James Bond.
Yeah, he could be a great old man Bond.
Yeah,
he looks more properly like a sophisticated gentleman than anybody at his age now.
Absolutely.
I'm like, dude,
absolutely.
How are you doing this? I'm getting old. I'm trying to figure out how do I cover up getting old. Well, it's not having a beard, but I'm just saying.
And guys, I mean, we'll go round and we'll do a rank out of 10 on this one.
Wow!
But you know,
you must change that word.
Oh, gee, let me guess what you guys are all going to rank this movie.
You might be surprised by mine, so I'm just
So Ian, what would you rank this out of 10? Score it. Deep
7, I guess. A 7.
Ooh, what are you, 7? IGN? What's going on?
No. Look, right. It is a good film, but there's loads of flaws in it.
Oh yeah. Continuity errors.
I think 7, continuity errors big time. I think 7 is a good mark to give it because it isn't great in my opinion, but it's very enjoyable. Look, if I give it an 8 or 7 or 9, that means it's really, really, really good. And there are lots of faults with that movie, especially some of the acting. So I think 7's a good one to give for me anyway. To give it,
I'm going to give Raiders of the Lost Ark a 4. I wouldn't do that.
Declared war now, haven't you, Coach?
It's got continuity problems, and it's got and honestly, I'm just going to tell you, I know it's one of your favorite films. I'm just going to say, hey, if Indy isn't involved in the film at all, nothing would have been different.
Probably, yeah.
So,
I don't know. I said I think I give it a 7. I think again, I don't think it's as sophisticated or as well shot as Raiders, That's why I give Ray. It's all to do with the direction and the way it's kind of presented and stuff like that. For me, Enter the Dragon is okay. You know what I mean? It's an iconic movie, but for me, it doesn't reach the point of 8 or 9 for me. But I still enjoyed it and I still loved it, and it's still part of my childhood. So there you go.
Ian knows I'm teasing him, so that's
I
why
know.
You've broken him.
Yeah.
Culture, what do you reckon?
Actually, I give it. I'm going to give it an 8. Again, this is one of those that just because of my sincere joy of watching the film every time, I'm like, oh, that was so good. You know, and that's kind of my response when it comes to like these classic films. We probably likely talk about in the future when I have the time to come on. But it just, I feel like you can't give it a perfect score. I almost never give a 10. I'm like the hardest critic, you know. So it's like you have to be like, there will never be another movie made like this. It kind of an impression that this one is just so it's so refreshing compared to what we see today. It is enjoyable. For whatever reason, it just seems like there are some films it's easier to look past the errors and the problems, and just really get into. A good proper popcorn, movie is something that you always filled you're fulfilled by. You fill your joy bucket, let's say, because I love to use that term, right? It's just and that sense of optimism and the appreciation of creativity, and you want to see a story that gets you from point A to point B, while you have a hero that struggles but eventually reaches their goal, and to what end, what's lost along the way, what's gained. But you have to have all of those things have to be met in order to have a film like this, and this is that kind of film. Cinematography on this for the time, again, I'm putting it in. This is 1973. Amazing. The production design, incredible. Stunts, unmatched at the time, because they're all physical activities. There's not a lot of extra aids being done here. I mean, Bruce Lee can literally jump that high. So, I mean, it's like, you're not asking for, special things. There's no green screen. Everything's real and authentic. And that's one of the reasons why this film is so, it is so looked at as something that started something that, went on for a long time. So it was the beginning of an age, or, as short as they are now in Hollywood. But no, it's a solid 8. This sound, the sound, despite the fact it's out of sync sometimes, and the score, the music is so you hear the intro to this film, what you're watching. You don't even have to see it. Well, not just that, but literally that it's incredible. And when you see the old-fashioned red and black and white logo for Warner Brothers come in, I mean, it's just what's there, and it maintains that same gravity that it had at the time. Now, not a lot of films will do that. It's nothing's going to feel the same. Whenever you saw this the first time, whether it was on a Betamax or at a local, neighborhood theater or whatnot, or even yesterday, this film is going to have that same impression on you every single time. In fact, you might find nuances there or things in there that you didn't see before, because there was a lot going on in the action scenes. So anyway, that's why this thing earns an 8 and not some IGN rating of a 7. I'm gonna go refresh my copy. Please excuse me a moment.
That's all right.
No problems. And Gary,
I'm gonna go with I'll go with 7.5.
7.5. Oh, wow.
I will say that I always love watching 70s films, because it's almost kind of like after watching tons of like the kind of recycled oatmeal that we've got in the last like 10 years, that it's just great to watch filmmaking that's more that's really, I know it sounds cliche, but that's edgy and raw, and almost not done by committee, not done by, you can tell that this is a passion project, that everybody's really invested in it. Watching somebody who's almost like superhuman, like Jackie Chan, who's like, it's like this guy is beyond normal human. And I love that this merely just going like that, you get the sound effect, you get the whip sound effect. It's like it wouldn't make a sound normally, but on the screen, it's like, it's like, wow, I didn't know that karate chop sounded like that. But no, and it's and it's just more like you guys are saying, you can imagine sitting in a kind of like a low rent theater with a full crowd all into this, who were jumping out of their chairs every time.
Everyone holding nunchucks
every single time that he, with the nunchucks and everything. So this was really, really enjoyable. I'm not an aficionado of kung fu films, but to watch somebody like Bruce Lee, that's like somebody you will never see again, is really something. It's hypnotic, really, in a way. And then the showpieces, like the mirror scene at the end, like the banquet scene where there's always something to look at. That was a very well shot scene. And so this wasn't just like a low rent, let's knock it out in a week film. I mean, there was craft and love in this. And the poster, I saw the original Bob Peak poster on Wikipedia. That is a gorgeous poster for this film. So no, this was hugely entertaining. So I'll just say 7.5.
Yeah. For me, it's an 8 as well. I mean, this is a film where I don't have the phone on. I'm not distracted by the phone because I enjoy this film so much. It literally, and it races through this film. It goes by so fast because I'm just in the moment enjoying it. It really is great. And then you've got, like you were saying, Gary, you've got the iconic mirror scene that movies going forward have copied and emulated. It is superb in it, culture. Yeah. It's just, how can you not love that, and, the whole, I'm going to fight you with my shirt off, it, I'm going to show you my pecs, then I'm going to beat you kind of movie. It's great. And it's a joy. It's an absolute joy to keep going back to this, and I've said many a times, I'm lucky that I grew up in an era where I had these movies, and I can look back and I can continually go back to these movies because they're special to me. And it paved the way to like the Van Damme movies that I love and adore as well, so it's an 8 from me, which is great. So this one's done all right out of us so far. I
just like to say, right, that with the Bruce Lee movies, right, especially Enter the Dragon, if you look at the Raid, for instance, when they fight, they're so fast that you think it's good and you enjoy it. But when you look at Enter the Dragon, it's slightly slower, but it's so accurate. Any punch that he does, you can see it. Any kick that he does, you can see it. And I think that's the big difference now between the martial arts of today and the martial arts of them. It was far more accurate in those days with the kicks and the punches, rather than it's so fast that it's just a blur. And then when you think about it, you can't remember where one punch started and one kick ended. Do you know what I mean? But with Enter the Dragon, I can remember when what's his name, John Saxon, was fighting Bolo. I can remember the kick. I can remember him biting his leg. I can remember all that stuff, you know. But with the Raid, I remember them fighting in the kitchen, but I can't even tell you if they used a knife or a headbutt or anything. Do you know what I mean? But with Enter the Dragon, the fights were so well choreographed. You can remember each step of what happened, So
I mean, I mean, you need to talk about Bolo as well. I mean, again, going into the later movies that I adore as well, and it's like Double Impact with Van Damme, and Bolo's the bad guy in it. I love Double Impact. I adore it. People always laugh at it, but I think it's great fun. And as soon as Bolo turns up, you're like, oh, this is going to kick off, this big unit. But I always laugh when I look at, like Bloodsport, and he takes his top off and he does that whole flex in his pecs, where they.
But isn't that his real name in real life? That guy isn't his real name Bolo in real life? Is it? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a question. Had Bruce Lee lived, would he have done? Because I mean, this almost seems like I said, you can't. I look at this and I thought, I think this guy isn't human. But I think that, I mean, had he lived, would he have done, I mean, how would you top this? I mean, would he have done like more movies where he's doing like this same thing
he
in
was
other movies like
working.
Return of the Dragon or things
Well,
like
he was
that?
working on Game of Death, wasn't he? After he finished, or
Yeah.
was it in between? He was doing Enter the Dragon. That was maybe a co-American whatever, but then he died. So there's only rushes of him, and I think they made a film around it, so they kind of got someone that's looked like him, and so
I-
Game of Death was released, but only with clips with him in it. But another guy was pretended to be him.
I think if he'd lived, he would have been in the same bracket that I would say, like, you know, your Stallones and your Schwarzeneggers, where
Yeah.
people go, I'm going to
Maybe.
see a Bruce Lee movie. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's how he would have been. So they would have been, he would have been successful. You know,
I agree.
and it's
Oh,
a
I'm
shame.
sure,
we
I'm
didn't
sure
get
of
to see
that,
more
but
of
it
him.
just, would it have been, you know, like I said, like Return of the Dragon or things
Probably.
like that, would have been more, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think he would have lived in. I think he maybe still he would have still been living to this day. I think he would have lived into his 70s, early
Yeah.
80s. I think he would have done as many films as he could in his later career. I think he would. I think what you're suggesting, and I would partially agree, is that would he be as I worship's the wrong word, but would he be as popular? Would he be as
Iconic. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I'm sure that he would,
Yeah.
but I just mean in terms of, would he then eventually have, you know, I don't know, either done not different types of movies, but it just seems like,
well,
you know, I watch Enter the Dragon and I thought this is like,
Like,
you know,
you mean
how
like
much,
Pretty Woman or
how
something
much,
like that?
well, no, like how much more than this could he do? Because this seemed so just beyond, you know, and if you like Ian has said before in other contexts, if you start up here, then, you know, how much more, you know, could you get if you already start like at the top?
Well,
And
I think he would have pushed. I think he would have pushed more for more elaborate martial arts in the film. He obviously wasn't a Laurence Olivier. Do you know what I mean, performance wise? But martial arts, he was top of his game. So I think if he lived, I think the next movie. In fact, if you look at the Game of Death, the stuff that he was doing,
would have been,
Death,
yeah.
it was
It would
was
have
the
been
next
amazing.
level. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so iconic, even though the film didn't get finished. You know, the jumpsuit that he used, that was in Kill Bill when
yeah,
Mhm.
the bride wore that same jumpsuit that he wore in Game of
Yeah.
Death. So he would have gone to the next level, but whether he would have stayed as a big movie star is another question.
would it have been kind of like, and this is going to sound weird, would he have been like kind of like a, you know, a Tom Cruise continually trying to top yourself in the
Maybe,
next
I don't
movie?
know.
I
Probably.
believe that. I believe it was built into him, Ian. I think
Yeah.
I think if you look at him, he was always evolving, and as
Yeah.
you have pointed out, he wanted to understand all other martial arts, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
a decent chance he could have gone and done Keezy fighting method, KSM,
Yeah.
which is in Batman Begins, or he
Yeah.
could have followed down fully with jujitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I could imagine him probably being when mixed martial arts combat started here and
you're
it
right.
started to gain popularity, he would have been like kind of the grandfather of it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think at that point he would have evolved so much. He always seemed to be wanting to top himself in everything that he did.
Yeah.
Picking up additional skills. Again, we're also kind of adding to his legend because we wouldn't know whether or not
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
could have been doing all these things. So
But-
I feel like he's legendary for exactly the reason that you may be suggesting, Gary, is that he did pass away at too young. We
Yeah.
never got to see maybe the top of his abilities, and
Yeah.
so now we're in a speculation windmill trying to.
But you
Yeah.
know,
figure it out.
I know a lot of people don't realize that Bruce Lee, when he lived in America, he was responsible for teaching James Coburn martial arts. He
Mhm.
taught Steve McQueen.
Yep.
He taught the guy who was in Longstreet. I can't remember the actor's
James
name.
Franciscus.
He taught him. So they're all in awe of Bruce Lee. But the problem was that Bruce Lee was not getting recognized by the establishment. That's why he left to go to Hong Kong. And when he died, James Coburn and Steve McQueen carried his coffin.
Wow.
So there you go. So he was well known in the actual industry with the
They
actors.
just
They
couldn't
loved
break
him.
through into
But
that top
Well,
tier.
no, it was the people at the top that were convinced that
He
people in
couldn't be a
America
star.
were not. Yeah, he couldn't because he's Asian. then Americans are not going to accept him as an Asian. So that's the thing.
Yeah, and that unfortunately was to their detriment, because I suggest had he been in the States, we would not have had the tragedy that occurred.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's just a different conversation, to be sure. But no, and look, everybody here put a rating on this film, and some of them were lower than they should have been.
And I mean, on another subject, I was going to say, have you seen at the moment with on a completely different tangent, have you seen lately about the press seem to be sort of turning on Star Wars now, which I find is quite interesting, IGN, as you were talking about, culture, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's amazing since the election how it started to turn,
Really?
Did any of us shed a single tear about the Ray series being canceled?
No.
But has that been official though?
It had things done. Disney's lost the will to make Star Wars. I feel. I really do.
How they tank that IP?
Gary, do you remember? Yeah, I know it's awful, but Gary, do you remember when the Skeleton Crew thing's coming? It's pretty soon, right? They're going to drop 2 episodes of it.
I actually even saw something this morning. They said they actually might release like the first 2 or 3 episodes in theaters.
I think.
What?
No. Yeah, no. He's right, 100%. I believe. Gosh, when did they announce that? It was like 5 days ago. It was before the holiday. So no, I think Gary's right on, spot on, and I think it is I believe it's the first 2 episodes. So,
Culture's already reserved his seats.
Goodness no. Goodness no.
I mean,
I saw that trailer. First of all, I thought, okay, first of all, it's kind of like the Goonies. Yeah. And I thought, and they ripped off the premise of Star Trek Prodigy, where the kids find the starship, go off for the adventures in space. It's like somebody needs to tell Paramount that they stole their idea. And people are going, well, this is, we're back to Star Wars. It's like, no, this is not original. No.
I always look at the studios, and I give them a softer glove than they deserve, because oftentimes they're all looking at scripts. All their readers are looking at scripts. All these producers' readers are looking at scripts all the time, and so it's going to stick in one of these readers' minds that the kid steals a starship. Okay, so you got Prodigy doing that. You have Skeleton Crew doing that. But before that, even we just had a horror film do that in Alien Romulus. So it's like these ideas don't go anywhere. It's the same idea. You just burp it into another script. So and in Hollywood, everybody talks to each other. Everybody talks. It's a constant talk. That's why they always get in trouble. That's why they're going to be getting some real trouble here in the very near future. But they talk to each other, so they all know, well, hey, I just read the script again, an interesting idea, and that gets around town. And again, if you're somebody like J.J. Abrams, you steal other people's stuff all the time. That's been your whole
JJ.
Anyway.
I mean, it's just, it's just like, normal people, like at a party. If you wear out your welcome, it takes a lot for you to be welcomed back again. And Star Wars has worn out its welcome.
Well, I think, for me growing up with Star Wars, even when it wasn't on, this is before the prequels, people still bought Star Wars stuff. They bought Star Wars merch because it was still loved, and it was a fan favorite, but they've completely just tanked the IP beyond belief now. I mean, I saw a picture the other day, and there's a toy of Boba Fett in a bargain bin. I never in my lifetime would have thought a Boba Fett toy would be in a bargain bin.
Was it a fat Boba Fett or was it a thin Boba Fett? was he overweight or was he Return of the Jedi thing?
It was him, and then there was 3 people behind him riding sort of mopeds.
Star Wars hasn't been the same for John since the Ewok adventure.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought was it Caravan of Courage where it went
That's
to the
right.
dark side,
Oh
or
my god.
you know, but I mean,
I'm gonna tell you right now, the Christmas special is genius compared to what
Yes.
we had.
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
They need to release that on Blu-ray 4K.
They do. They do.
I tell you what, though,
They've
Mark
never given
Hamill
us
in that
Star
Christmas.
Wars.
Mark
Oh, yeah.
Hamill in that Christmas one, his smile and that haircut and how pale he is, that's a movie villain in itself right there
Absolutely.
from that holiday special. It's
Listen, Mark
terrifying.
Hamill was just so happy to be recognized and to be famous. You can tell every pore of that guy was happy with his situation. I actually met him when he was making Empire Strikes Back, and I met him in Selfridges, and he signed my book, and he was so happy to see me, even though
Yeah.
he didn't know me. He was like, "Hey, how are you? So do you like Luke?" and stuff like that. And now you see him, he's like this.
What happened to him?
horrible-
Yeah.
what happened to
Yeah.
him? I mean,
Well, I mean, look, I think they broke him. I think he was already kind
did.
of a broken man, but I think they broke him when they Jake Skywalkered him. I think he just saw
Yeah.
like his whole career trajectory, you know,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh man, I'm still on the way up. I'm doing all this voice acting, you know, I'm doing, you know, people still love me at conventions," and then Ruin Johnson comes along and
Yeah.
gives him the Jake Skywalker treatment, and he's like, "Oh man."
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
I think they got duped because originally the original script that they showed to the three of them, right? You see that famous picture where it's black and white and they're all sitting on the sofas, all of them,
Mhm.
and they're talking. They got brought in and they read the original script and they thought it was fine, and that's why they came in. But then once they signed the contracts, everything changed.
Yeah, because
So,
George
yeah.
sold the company out from underneath
Exactly,
them, and yeah. I mean, that was part of the deal, was to get those three on board
Yeah.
so that Disney could buy, you know, and that's what
Yeah.
made the company worth the $4.04
Yeah.
billion. So it's an
And
interesting story, and you have to consider that George was thinking that they were going to move forward with at least
Yes.
some of his treatments.
Yeah.
And you know, because at the time he just basically had outlines for, you know, and scene breakdowns, because that, you know, the treatments, the you know, the possibly even coverage pages and such, but they didn't have a proper, or he didn't have a proper script. At least that's what I'm to understand. Ian, you may know more, but
they should have done Heir to the Empire. They should have adapted that. That would have been a
but but aren't they kind of destroying that now, or weren't they trying
yeah.
to,
I mean,
or-
it's wouldn't go anywhere near that now with what's it, Ahsoka, isn't it? They're doing it in. Oh dear.
You know what?
And,
I blame Ian for not making a
What?
bigger impression
yeah,
on
exactly.
that young Luke Skywalker.
Okay. That well, look, right. KK, right, is good as a producer working with other people, but she's not a leader. She's not a person to put in charge of stuff, and that's where they went wrong. That's where they went wrong. She has no clue.
Well, look, if she were just like, you know, making sure that the trains ran on time, then they would be fine. But even Spielberg said, she never had good creative ideas.
No.
You know, and look, she could bring you good coffee though.
But,
yeah, exactly.
but she is a good producer. She helped produce Schindler's List.
Oh, she did.
She's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but she's not a leader, and she's not a creative.
Creative, no.
And again, she went headlong into this whole idea, and in fact, the entire Disney company did after that. You know, that they were going to put women in charge of things because women had never done things before, and of course, she's the living proof that women had done things before. So it was really dumb.
Yeah, it was.
It's baffling. It really
and again, you go to acquire these boy brands, Marvel, Disney, etc., and you acquire the broadest possible appealing brand on the planet in Pixar, and what do you do with them?
Turn it into girls, girl brand.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
girls ruin everything.
No. We like them. They're very fancy.
Well, and you know, with me as well, being, you know, a big Doctor Who fan from the early 80s, the fact that Disney have a connection to Doctor Who now was one of the worst nightmares confirmed for me, because you know, having Fruity doing the show has been.
Well,
did you say fruity?
Fruity, yeah.
Careful now, careful.
Well, John said it before, where he said, and it's true, the studios are so risk averse that I just don't think that the circumstances exist now to have somebody like a 70s George Lucas come in and convince a studio to go with something like Star Wars and then have it become the culture shifting thing that it did. I think that, honestly, again, before we mention Christopher Nolan, Spielberg is Ian's favorite. I think that you'd have to have one of those few remaining people with enough name power that if they wanted to take up like a populist sci-fi idea and put it out, where the studios would go, okay, we'll go with it and see what happens. That's about the only way I think it could happen, because you can't have Joe nobody come into the studio and go, I have a great idea, the world's going to love it, but they're going to go, okay, there's the door.
But do you know what's puzzling, Gary and Culture and everybody and John? What's puzzling to me is Spielberg has all the money in the world, right? Scorsese has all the money in the world, right? Other directors, famous directors like Nolan, whatever, do they need the studio? No. Spielberg can make a film tomorrow if he wanted to, a low budget film if he wanted to, and just put it out there. What is he waiting for? But what, does he need the studio money to make something? It's
okay, but we just watched this terrible failure from somebody I consider the apex of directing.
Yes, but Spielberg's not him. So that's what I'm saying. He's not him. Spielberg has a lot of imagination.
Wait, which movie are you talking about, Culture?
Metropolis.
Yeah, the one that I had such high hopes for. Metropolis.
That one. With Coppola. Yeah, that was terrible.
And I feel like you guys don't even know I had such high hopes for that film. I'm kind of to say I'm a heartbroken may not be overstepping, like an actual emotional, visceral reaction that I have, because I expected so much more. But he spent his own money.
It's different.
He made it. He spent his own money. He was probably well past his expiration date, because we all reach it. And he pushed this idea and he tried to make it relevant to today. And that was his big mistake, because if he just told the story he was originally going to tell, I think he would have ended up with a much better product. But we'll set that aside for now. And I'll just say this. If Tarantino walked up to Disney and said, let me make a trilogy for Star Wars that I get complete control over.
Yeah.
Do you think Disney would let him do it?
No chance.
Now, we're talking about the guys that have gravitas, right? We're talking about the guys that have the weight in the industry. So again, we're thinking, Gary's right. Risk averse. That's all these studios are. Isn't Tarantino like the most safe bet you could make on a Star Wars property?
Well, they had that issue with remember when he was linked to Star Trek as well, wouldn't he? And that died a death. But
no, the thing I'm talking about is, look, why is it that all these directors want to make something that takes a lot of money to make? Right? Why? I mean, because when Spielberg wasn't famous, he did Duel, which cost very little to Universal Studios, right? Why isn't, if Spielberg really wants to make films, why is he waiting for the studios giving money? Why can't he just do something that's kind of personal to him or small to him, and just do it with his own money? I mean, like, he could spend $1 million and it wouldn't even dent his bank statement. Do you know what I mean? I don't understand why he needs the studio. Like, he made what is it, West Side Story, which is well directed, by the way, but a bad movie, totally bad movie, right? But why did he need them? If he wanted to make a musical, why didn't he just write one or get writers, hire writers, and make something that's a reasonable budget to do? And then, you know what? The distributors are going to be all over it. You know that, because it's got Spielberg's name on it.
I don't know if they will. I think the trouble you've got, mate,
are they scared of spending their own money? Is that
we were just talking about Megalopolis, and he had to finance that himself.
But with him,
problem.
But with him, right? he's crazy. He went and spent his money on something that was so obvious that wouldn't work. It was so obvious. There's no one can tell me after reading that script, you'll think that script will work. No one. Even if I read it, I'm
originally,
like, what?
but the original script, the original idea that he had didn't involve the messiness that showed up in the later what we saw. It's just so when I look at that and then I look at I think there are a lot of no-brainers out there. I think if you get the right guy, you've got a no-brainer. But these studios still won't even go with that.
No,
I'm kind of
they don't need them.
Well, you're right, but I'm kind of perplexed why you can make a film for $9 million. And satisfy a global population that has been a fan of something for 70 years. I'm talking about Godzilla. You can make Godzilla -1 for no money. I mean, I know that sounds like a lot of money. It's a lot of money to us, but to a studio, it's like nothing. Like that's like the freaking catering budget for a Disney show.
Yeah.
So, so that's where you're at though, is like how can that happen?
Why, don't we? We know why, don't we? Because of the fact that if they don't make films that cost less than $1 billion or less than 100 million, the execs are not going to get their cut. They're not going to get their usual X amount of money.
You need to drop the budget, though.
Be 10 execs wanting their money, and that's one of the reasons why they make those films so big, don't they?
But look, if you're an investor and you're looking at Disney, and you've seen that they've had some actual success this year.
Yeah.
I still can't explain to Moana 2. I may be forced to see that. I don't want to. Thank you, Gary, for making me think about that. But I may have to go see it. But you look at the small successes that they've had, and everybody's like, well, that film made over $1 billion. It certainly did. But do you know how long it took them to get back to making a film that was actually profitable? It took them 7 films.
Yeah.
So and then you have the success of Moana, and you had the success of Deadpool and Wolverine. Well, Deadpool and Wolverine, you had nothing to do with. It was greenlit under Chapek. Yeah. They let Ryan Reynolds do whatever he wanted, along with what's his name, the new guy, Levy.
Hugh Jackman,
right?
Oh
I mean, but like creatively was Levy. He's going to be directing potentially going to be a Star Wars director.
Another one.
Inside Out 2 made money though, didn't it?
No, absolutely. That's what I was referring to. Yeah. So no, it made 1.3 billion, I believe. So it made a handsome profit. Handsome.
But they took all the woke out.
They took the nonsense out and it went forward. Deadpool was already going to be an anti-nonsense film. Kind of mocking it. And Moana 2 was going to be a kids' television show.
Yeah.
So I'm betting, if I were going to place a bet on Polymarket or wherever you're legally allowed to bet on film, I would place a bet that the Lion King prequel, because it destroys the lore, is not going to be the Ford Quadrant appeal that they think it's going to be coming up, at the end of the year. I think Mufasa will struggle at best.
Yeah. Do you think that Disney are going to reverse course in the next few years due to the current political climate that's changed in the US? Because, Iger's made rumblings, isn't he, to the investors, which I never believe a word that comes out of that guy's mouth.
A consummate liar. He's an accomplished liar.
Yeah.
He's a sociopath. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, even if they did decide to reverse course, what is it? You're talking probably a decade minimum to fix a problem?
Well, I don't know. I mean, development cycles range from 4 to 6 years.
Wow.
If you think about it, from idea, concept, pitch to pre-production work, which takes forever, by the way, now, because you got to get everything lined up in a row. And you have to hire the right, line producer, so on and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot of steps here. Then, everybody's contracts have to be in line. You have to fit it in a window. It used to be a problem of finding a studio to even shoot in. Now that's not a problem. There's more studios than productions at the moment.
Yeah.
You have to actually farm the film credits. Most people are going to the UK because you guys are literally giving away money for no reason.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's all this stuff that you have to line up in a pretty little package. You have to code name it. It has to create its own LLC or whatever your production vehicle is. So by the time you jump through all these hoops, I mean, you're maybe 4 years down the road. So let's call it at the very minimum, let's call it a 3-year window. 3 years from idea, pitch to produce product, release product even. That's a long time. So it takes forever to turn that boat around. And
well, 4 to 6 years, that'll be around the time that the next Captain America movie debuts.
I don't know. I mean, I really hope not. He's gone. He probably went to go get coffee or bathroom.
Yeah,
he went for
he's gone off for he's gone off to recharge.
I almost said it.
He's off to the vase, the loo, the head.
You know what I think, actually, Culture? What's the likelihood of them taking those original 8 Moana episodes that you were talking about, throwing all 8 episodes like onto Blu-ray and marketing it as a special expanded edition?
Why not?
And making an extra little bit of money. They'll probably do that.
I'm sure they will. I mean, there's no downside to that. The problem is it won't be as well animated because a lot of that was, reanimated, recooked. It won't. I don't think it'll have the kind of songs it did. By the way, the songs in this are the biggest complaint I'm getting from my friends that are going to see or have seen this now.
Well, but I mean, don't you think, Culture, that a lot of especially like for the family movies, the reason that they're doing well is not because of the inherent quality of the movie, is just because there's literally nothing else out for parents to take their kids to. So it's basically, we have a choice of this or nothing. We'll go to this, and it ends up making $185 million.
Well, yes, I think it's the product of not having anything to watch. I think that's 100% true. I mean, there's no competition right now. Normally, you've got a top 10 film, list for a reason, because there's usually 10 good films coming out at the same time. That doesn't exist right now. Yeah. Of the 27 films, this has been bothering me for a while, because 27 to 36 is okay, but that's usually the number of wide releases that you could possibly see or whatever, or even limited releases are counted now too. But when I was looking at the very desperate and dismal, thank you, dear, a very desperate and dismal box office number, I was looking at the overall box office number for weeks on end, 6, 8, 10 weeks, where we were not crossing 100 million domestically. That's like the bare minimum number in the States. It should be 100 million a weekend, specifically, not week, a weekend. So you should be making 100 million a weekend. We weren't even close. We were in the 80s. We got down to the 60s at one point, 67 million, I think, one weekend. And I
how do you get that back, Culture? I mean, how do you change that and change the culture there? Because I think also, a lot of families in the US and worldwide, they probably don't trust Disney as a brand.
Well, but John, there's also the reality. There's also the reality, at least here for our economy. I mean, there is the reality of just not having as much disposable income. Yeah. I mean, you can want to take your family out for an entertaining evening all you want, and that's great. But if just realistically, you don't, because I think that will change in the next year, as the economy bounces back with new policies and everything. But for the last year or two, our disposable income for the average family, whatever that is these days, has been kind of like tanking. And so all the desire to go out for a fun night, you can have that all day long, but if you don't have the money to do it, then
well, and that's because of what John was suggesting too. I think, Gary, is that the people have lost faith in these production studios. Yeah. I mean, Disney's in particular. And we'll ask you guys a question, and Gary can probably respond quickly as well here in the States. What's the 4-quadrant movie that's out right now? What appeals to all ages?
It's not
Wicked.
It's not anything.
Is it Wicked?
No, it's not.
It's not Wicked.
I think UK.
I mean, are you going to go take your kids to see Gladiator 2?
No.
Not the young
one.
I'm
not even going to take myself to go and watch Gladiator 2.
Right.
I'm not going to watch it.
Right. No. And see, people are starved for that kind of a thing. I think Gary's right there, but I don't think there's anything that's broadly appealing. And so you look at your wallet, and then you look at what's on offer, and you go, that's a waste of my money. You know, I can go, I can sit at home and watch this amazing Blu-ray, you know, of this, you know, the greatest movie ever made, like Showgirls, the director's cut. And
yeah,
you know,
I knew you were going to bring that one up.
I have to. Oh, every time somebody brings me on for a movie review show, I got to try to squeeze that in there. But truthfully, you know, you can entertain yourself at home much cheaper. And I'm telling you, I mean, we're seeing people go back to cooking meals at home more in the States. And I mean, Gary, would you estimate there's about a 40% difference in what your disposable income is now versus what it was 8 years ago, 7 years ago?
In terms of what my income, in terms of
what
what it can buy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What? Yeah. But the difference in what is, but there's also a difference in what is disposable. You don't. You're 40. I believe if you do the math, you're 40% less able to have, because that money's not disposable anymore. It got cut by 40%. The inflation is a huge problem. Yeah. And then you look at the ticket prices, right? Ticket prices jumped well over the inflation threshold by miles. You also have my to-do list is getting added to right now. I can see that happening. But you're seeing this massive difference in what you can afford. Disney's cut itself out of the theme park market. I mean, they're a theme park entertainment company, right? Theme parks first, film, television second, all the other bologna sausage third. Although technically, I guess if you have to roll the cruise line in with the theme parks, but it's experiences, right? So when you do that and you look at that, they're depleting the 70% of their revenue, which is theme parks, head over heels because they're charging so much more. When you look at what there's that
one coming across the road as well, isn't there? You know,
down the street on the I-4 in Orlando. Lined up
correctly. Yeah, they've got all their ducks.
Okay, I just quickly Googled Disneyland ticket price. So Disneyland ticket price is right now a non-discounted 1 day, 1 park ticket for either Disneyland or Disney California Adventure. So you can't switch between the two. Starts at $104 for guests over age 9.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and Disneyland's a little different mechanism too. If you look at the Disney World number, it will blow your mind. And then you look at what you have to do if you want to make sure you ride everything on a busy day. Of course, fortunately, Disney's attendance is crashing because they've jacked their prices all the 80s. But you start to look at that. And again, that Park Place has been reporting on it well. WDW Pro, everybody, you know, in that sphere that I hang out in. But when you look at those numbers, you're like, this isn't affordable. This is not a middle class income. This is, you know, I mean, they offer you folks up there in the lovely UK these amazing deals, travel deals. But when you get here, you go, holy cow, I'm going to have to spend that much again in food.
Yeah,
because man, unless you're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, everything in the parks is ridiculous. So,
but it was a time when so you had the theatre for middle class, upper class people in England. Then you had cinema, and cinema was for the working class.
Yeah,
because it was cheap. You know, like you go in and buy 50 pence. In those days, it was 50p per ticket. Can sit in the cinema and watch it 3 times as it spins round and stuff like that. But now it's very much in par with some of the theatre. I mean, on Saturday, I was with my sister, and she wanted to see Devil Wears Prada, the theatre play. Do you know how much that ticket was just by walking in? We said, well, what's the cheapest seat? 72 quid.
Oh,
the seat is 72 quid, and that was like right at the back. So I mean,
it's
come
crazy
on
now, isn't it?
Come on.
That's for sitting in the bathroom with the sound piped in.
yeah, literally.
Wow.
Yeah. 72 quid.
Now, wait, is that
all the way back?
Is that in the West End proper?
Yes, West End. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right then. Wow.
I don't know how they get it back. I don't know how they get the.
It's kind of in line with the Broadway ticket.
Yeah, it's 72. It's ridiculous, and Lord knows how much it is to have the proper seat right in front. It must be like over 200, maybe 150 or something like that.
And if I'm going to see a musical, I'm trying to find a balcony seat because I want to see everything. You know, it's the best way to see Phantom is sitting dead center in the balcony, so that you can watch the chandelier at the beginning of the show just scary to death. That gives me a heart attack every time. I know it's coming, but no, it's just like Phantom. It's like, whoa, blah, 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 blah. It's like,
I don't know
wow.
what your balconies are in America, but in England, I find them scary because literally it just comes up to here to you, up to your hip.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So
I
if
would
you
never.
lean
I would never
forward,
sit at the
it's
front
like,
of. I would never sit at the front of a balcony ever.
It's so scary. I think I went to 2 theater things with that, and
it's
incredible.
fine. Yeah, just because it comes to your knees, you know, you don't have to worry about falling over.
That'd be even worse if it came to your knees.
Okay, so one of my favorite places to see shows, which I don't talk about at all, you know, is literally the place. It's all glass up from there. So from your knees,
really?
yeah. So up from your knees, you have that. You also have the sound system that's installed at the base at the front. You know, so. But it's kind of lovely to sit up there and just watch a show like that. But maybe I understand your point. But no, I still, regardless, even if I'm you know, ground level, I'd still like to be like halfway back and center.
But in the theaters in the West End in England, they're really old.
Yeah, no,
they've been there for a long time. So
billion years,
and it's like they you know, safety is not important for them. You know, as long as the money's coming in, you know.
It's like an enter at your own risk sign at the front of the theater.
It's also, I mean, I don't know, Casino, if you've been to Cannes. So the main cinema in Cannes, that's scary too. Have you ever been in there? The main one?
No.
Right. Basically, the cinema is really old and it's very steep.
Oh yeah.
So if you're in the middle, literally you're looking down at the next person and it just keeps going. And then the screen is there. It's very unnerving.
I couldn't do that.
It's very unnerving in there.
Why? You guys, oh my goodness. Okay.
Scary.
Okay, well, I can tell you're not a roller coaster guy.
I don't even like roller coasters.
I do like roller coasters.
I like Space Mountain. That's contained.
There you go. Yeah. I feel like anyway, back to it. No, I don't. John's original question, which we've wandered away from for like was about where we find ourselves, you know, in the turnaround. And look, they've already started to turn around, right? They saw kind of the handwriting on the wall. Hollywood had been looking at it. Disney reportedly, according to Film Threat, and I believe them, kind of got rid of a bunch of producers in Marvel that were a problem. Everybody's going to have to take much more extreme measures. You're gonna see that reflected in, you know, news media cancellations and things like that here in the States in particular. You're seeing it in the viewership of things like Sky News and stuff in your neck of the woods and such, where they're now going heavy against the left side of things and just smacking them down like left or right.
Well, they're even talking about you know, potentially there's talk of them maybe even shutting down Sky News because it's the ratings are so low, viewership is so low because GB News is tanking it.
Unless you're in Australia, and then they're doing great.
Exactly.
Because Rita over there is slaying them. I was like, holy cow, Rita, dial it back. She's killing people. But I look at it and I go, sorry, I try to keep up with everybody because my audience now is everywhere. I did not realize that. I've got like people in the UK and Australia and in Asia. I'm like, oh well, hello Japan, how are you doing over there? It's pretty wild. But you know, it's trying to pay attention to so much at one time. It shows me that there is an impact, and I'm not American centric. I try, at least I don't think I am. I try to, in good faith, deal with the subject matter I talk about by understanding the culture that I'm talking about and where they are politically. And so, you know, and looking at that, I'm seeing these changes. But the American election had an impact globally. Everybody like decided, oh wow, we have to put our suit and tie back on because, you know, we can no longer act like children.
Yeah. So, or put the dress away. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. But that's going to play. You guys are right, but that's going to play into changes in these studios all over the place. I think you know, Gary kind of hit the nail on the head a little while ago. I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see them start to take up those scripts that they set aside to. Well, maybe we can do this later, or maybe we could have somebody write this. I think you're going to pick those scripts up and start working on them now. Because I think it's the only way forward.
For them, it is,
and the other problem is, you guys don't, Gary, I'm not sure where you live in the country, but Hollywood is properly
Southern
lost.
California.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you and I have a very common ground when I say this following statement. That's not where I am now, but Southern California was a haunt for me for a long time, especially San Diego. But regardless, going back to that, Hollywood's properly lost its mind.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I know you know that, and they've driven production out of Hollywood. Those 19 blocks, those very important 19 blocks are devoid of.
I worked on the copy desk of the Hollywood Reporter during the 90s.
Oh wow! Okay, then you.
I know the 19 blocks you're talking about.
Yeah, and they've lost their mind. The leadership in that state is completely detached from reality, and what drives the economic engines in the state. They're chasing out oil. They're chasing out entertainment. They're even chasing out tech, which I thought was impossible. So,
and that's going to keep happening, in my opinion, for a while, because they're still in the denial phase. They're still in the tantrum denial phase, and because they don't have any way forward, any defined way forward now, since their loss was so overwhelming, I think they're going to be in that tantrum denial phase for a while. Only because there's no other path right now for them. Yeah.
Now, I would like to point out something stark, because this is something we probably need to acknowledge. We watched an amazing film full of all kinds of organic diversity and everything else. We reviewed it, all of this thing, right? But when we turn back to Hollywood now, what are we talking about? Politics.
Yeah.
That's it. Entertainment is now.
There's no escapism.
Yeah. And that's why things suck. I'm sorry, I know it sounds like simplification, but I mean, Gary just proved it. Being someone that's embedded in this particular thing, you cannot talk about entertainment in Hollywood without talking about the politics that have driven it. I mean, one of the things, if you look back at, they made a film recently, well, not nearly independent, but somewhat independent film recently about Ronald Reagan's presidency and his I talked about that film. I thought it was brilliantly done. And it was warts and all, because they told bad stuff, they told good stuff. A little more hopeful America that he had back then. And he talks about the politics that had gotten into Hollywood at the time and the reason they had to name names. And, maybe McCarthy was right. Well, no, he probably was. And, they made a special law in California so that you couldn't try to run out the commies. Well, what happens? Well, that just became the home for the commies, and the ideologies that, drive everything that's a collectivist kind of a thought process. So, but we can't talk about entertainment now without talking about the political influence that is on everything. And that was my whole point of bringing it there, because I don't like talking about it. But
everything is politics. I mean, I don't know how many in the last 2 weeks, I don't know how many little features on TV or things that popped up in my Facebook feed. Basically, here's instructions on how to be civil to friends and family during Thanksgiving. You have to be instructed on how to be civil to your family and friends. Because there's an assumption that politics has wedged everything. That's their assumption, because they can't conceive of anything different.
And we're in the UK, we're always downriver from you guys. So, when you talk about the, TV shows and movies, when you've got the likes of the BBC and companies like that, operations like that,
you guys
they were bad before, but
now they're worse
until Hollywood is fixed. It's downriver, and that's the trouble we've got. I mean, the BBC, I never thought in my life they would do what they did to my beloved show, Doctor Who. I never thought that would happen.
Look, I'm so tired of talking negatively about Doctor Who, and yet there's nothing but.
There's nothing. So no point talking about it.
Nothing good. Yeah.
So and I've done scores of videos on Doctor Who. Now I stopped doing them. There's just because there's always it's a river of bad news.
And there's no interest. There's no interest in it now as well.
Nobody's watching it. Disney did properly destroy it. I thought it was funny when it was season 1 over here. I was like, what? All right, whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm like, that's a proper death right there. But but BBC, I feel bad for you. Just because you're going to be paying for it through 2027, according to your cultural minister.
We're not going to be
now.
paying for it. We're not going to be paying. They can't make us pay for it.
Well, they're going to try.
Well, they're going to try,
Yeah.
but they can't because they'll
So-
have to change the law, I guess, to make us pay for it.
Can I ask where does the BBC go? Because this is the biggest fear I had for the BBC all along, going back to Wayback Machine. Was that it would become a statist media, like this is Pravda, this is just a propaganda.
It is,
and it fully got there since I think since 2017, I think is when it really started to go the wrong direction fast. So I'm like I stopped watching shows. I was like, I'm not going to watch this show anymore.
My dad worked for the BBC for his whole life. I've said this to you, Ian, before, but as a kid at school, kids would come up and my dad was like, almost like a local celebrity because, he works for the BBC. Because back then in the 80s, the BBC was a great thing. Kids loved it. There were great shows on. Now, people don't care about the BBC. In fact, they've had enough of the BBC. I mean, what is it? It's 500,000 have cancelled their TV licenses this year. And it's purely because even if you take all of the ideology to the side, you can't remember really the last show that you watched on the BBC and you thought that's a great show. And BBC used to be great at making a lot of great stuff, but now it's not. I mean, it's most of their time goes into making BBC free drag queen shows. That seems to be, they fill up on a lot of that now. So I don't know. I think they have to get rid of the license fee. And I think the BBC is dying. I mean, to give you an example, I watched the BBC News the other day and they were talking, no, not the other day. It was just after the election and it was all propaganda against Trump. And I sat there and I said to my mum at the time, I said, that's not true. I've seen the full interview with Trump, but they've edited this to make it look like he's a monster. That's what they're doing. And then I go to ITV. ITV have done exactly the same.
So both of them are the same.
This is where I was sort of saying earlier, the USA, we're always downriver. So we have it's taken longer to get to the point where you have with the likes of CNN and MSNBC, where it's all propaganda.
Well, but you notice though that especially in the last 2 weeks, the two really kind of pro-leftist news stations here, CNN and MSNBC, their ratings have crashed. I'm sure Culture's reported on this in his daily news. I mean, to the extent where MSNBC is now probably up for sale. Everybody's panicking over there.
Is Elon going to buy it?
I hope he does. I really hope he does. And all of the celebs and everybody have flocked away from X over to they've herded themselves over to Blue Sky. So all of their refuges are kind of shrinking. It's like they're herding themselves into their little bubbles, which are shrinking. And that's fine with me. It's like, go off to your little corrals and everything.
It's tiny, isn't it? It's tiny. The left, isn't it, compared to people with sense? If it wasn't,
but they yell louder.
Yeah, but if it wasn't, you'd be walking down the road in LA and you'd be seeing all these bald people, wouldn't you? They'll all be bald because they've shaved their hair off. They shaved their hair off because of what's happened, isn't it? But you're not seeing any, are you? Do you know what I mean? So
I think it appeals. I think this is Gary's right. I think you're seeing it's not just it's a restoration of reality. Because people are being more thoughtful. And the trend for the longest time was to lean to these extreme directions and kowtow. And the people are boldly wearing MAGA hats and you're watching the shifts in New York, like New York City and places like that. You've got Mayor Adams over there. He's like, you guys aren't going to keep trying to take me down. I'm going to fight back and it's going to get ugly for you. And look, okay, so being from entertainment media, Gary, which is information I wish I'd known at the beginning of this, I got to ask you, when did media consolidation is the whole problem here in the States. It created this problem where you have all these echo chambers, right? So like Penske Media acquired Hollywood Reporter not that long ago, right? I mean,
well, the Hollywood Reporter, though, that's out now is a much different animal from when I worked.
that's my point.
I worked during, the days when it was a daily,
right.
with huge special issues mixed in on any given week, and we in Variety were the two, going head to head. Now it's like a monthly kind of features magazine.
Well, they have a daily digital, right? The daily digital's still there, but no, you're right. And again, that was different. I mean, the trade papers operated differently, and then Nicky Fink came in and foiled it all.
Right. Yes.
That's when Deadline came in. But now they're all owned by Penske. So, when I look at that and I'm going, okay, so that it consolidated all the trade papers except for Sharon Waxman's wackadoodle thing, the rap, because she's completely lost her mind. But she even like criticized her mom, who passed away because of the global crisis, injection fest. So anyway, back to this. So the media consolidation, I think, has been the driving force behind these creation of these echo chambers, because everybody had the same thought. If you were Meredith back in the day, you reported the same thing the same way, you read the same stuff. Remember the statement they made every station read in harmony. That video's popular. Right, talking about we don't believe in this, da 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 da.
That was the old concept, even in like journalism classes that I had with the marketplace of ideas. That was one of the first thing. That marketplace has long closed.
Yeah.
But
I guess that's the entire point. Is once you started to get all that consolidation, once you had billionaires who had these leftist opinions in place and stuff like that, requiring these media outlets, they had no trouble with that. You get one guy and Elon Musk come out and just acquire one media tool, and they lose their mind
because because they see there's a crack in their power and they panic.
Yeah, and and that panic created where we are now. Anyway, I'll stop talking, but
it's fine.
Relate that because I think.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think though how long do you think it's going to take for Hollywood to reset and go back to trying to make money now?
That feeds into what John asked. It's the same question, just a different aspect of it. I think they need to make money now. I think they know that. So
hold on. So basically, are we dealing now with the last bits of woke movies? So these movies, like Snow White, is a woke movie. They say it's a woke movie. So are we dealing with the last bits? And from now on, they're going to be making movies that's supposed to talk to the audience now. Do you think that's what's going to happen now?
I think a lot of studios will pivot now. I think they were already starting before, as I said before, but I think Disney will be the last one to turn the ship. And I think that's going to hurt them.
Isn't it? Yeah,
they're going to hurt that's going to hurt them the most. But what does Tom call it? The final re. I think I think Tom from Midnight's Edge After Dark. I think calls it the final re. I think that we've officially reached it. We're at the beginning of all the tantrums you're going to see. You're going to have 4 years of tantrums, and they're going to peter off as the years go by, because the shift is a return to common sense, how a civil society operates, all of the things, rather and the pushback against the importation of other people that have entirely different systems. Even Starmer in your lovely UK had to come out and acknowledge, well, we've been running this experiment to import a bunch of inconsistent ideologues into our midst.
That guy's an idiot.
He didn't say it that way. He said it more.
And do you know why they had to come out on that? Because there was a Reform UK MP that was pushing the department for the figures on immigration.
Yeah.
They had to release them. So that's why he did his speech, because he had to try and get out of the out in front of the storm, because he knew it was coming. And when you've got 1 million, what was it, 1 million in 12 months, and then they wonder why our infrastructure is struggling, our NHS is struggling. This is it's all downriver from that, isn't it? You don't have to be a super intelligent person to figure out everything's connected.
Well, one of the things that I expect to see, that I won't be surprised to see discussed by Culture on his show or like Midnight's Edge, is that, most of everything that's coming out now, and Culture said it himself, there's a lag to everything that's coming out now was commissioned and developed, like 2-3 years ago. So they can't just like wipe those off the table like overnight. But what I think that the election revealed is that, at least for America, every single state, to some degree, some huge, some small, shifted to the right. That was not saying that every state went for the Republicans, but to some degree in every state there was a shift. And so to me that revealed is that I think people are at the limits of their tolerance for all of the nonsense, for all of the stuff going on in the schools, for all the stuff going on in culture, all the stuff going on in media, which then trickles down to hit them in their pocketbooks or through crime or whatever. And everybody is at the limits of their tolerance. And I think that's going to bleed in the entertainment industry. They're more open to showing they're more comfortable with showing their intolerance for all the garbage they're getting on TV and movies. But so what I think that's going to translate, since there's like 2-3 years of product still coming, I don't know, Culture, I'm expecting to see a lot more stories about the re-editing, like the Inside Out 2 type of re-editing, to where it's product that they can't just wipe off the boards, but they're going to try to re-edit it and adjust it maybe to fit more into the zeitgeist of what's going on now. I don't know what you think.
Captain Falcon's got about 3 films already out of one load of several reshoots, isn't it?
I could not believe that story. And then I confirmed it with one of my friends, because I was like, okay, Daniel RPK's got some stuff. Occasionally he gets, he's got a over 50% record. So I was like, I'm inclined to believe this, but then I asked, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they really are doing reshoots again."
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. But do you think that's like a Culture that you'll see like a lot of re-edits of what's already coming rather than wiping it out?
No, your observation is spot on, my friend. I think that's the only way they're going to try to salvage some of the product that they have. Look, the Thunderbolts thing is going to be kind of a mess. It's one of the. It could break even, but I don't understand the idea of not capitalizing on the actual legitimate strong females and all of their attributes, and not downplaying their beauty and all this other stuff in favor of this girl boss thing. Well, Snow White, no matter how many times they work on that film, is a girl boss film. That is the plot. That's the way the film is made. You can reshoot it again. Go to take another swing at it and reshoot the whole thing all over again. Try to leave all the CG assets in place, but there is no way to make the actress that's in that likable,
right?
Yeah,
and there's no way to make that story not girl boss,
unless they reshoot all of it again.
You know what I wish they would do, Culture? Instead of releasing the movie, I just want to see the video of the phone call that Disney made to Rachel Zegler when. After she made that Trump statement, because that had to be an epic smackdown. I just want to hear the audio of that call.
I think that would sell. I think they could make a lot of money.
I'd go to the theater to see that.
The 12-minute studio call to Rachel Zegler. That would be it.
Yeah. Do you know what I think they need to do now, though, guys? I think they need to go to the team that did Star Trek Unification. Get that face mask that they use for Kirk, but do one for Rachel Zegler, and then just get another actor to actually do the press junkets and Instagram. For
I honestly think that when it comes to things like the Captain America and the Snow White, and maybe there's others that don't come to mind right now, I just think because ideologically they're putting their foot down and say like, there's no way we're giving up on this. That's holding on with claws to their ideology, and these movies represent their ideology, and they will be damned to let these things sink.
I said this in another stream. I don't know, was it yesterday, whatever. How stupid is this, right? They had a black hero called Falcon, right? Falcon.
Yeah.
Right. Very well played by Anthony Mackie, right? A lot of black kids loved Falcon, and they loved Black Panther. And what do they want to do? They want to take that iconic black character, which they're trying to push, the black culture into the zeitgeist, and make him a white character, which is Captain America. And
Yeah.
does it not make any sense to you?
See,
Yeah.
I grew
It's
up.
like,
I grew.
oh,
I
defeat
grew.
the whole object.
But Ian, I grew up loving
Yeah.
Sam. I grew up
Falcon
loving that
Marvel.
Yeah, same
character.
here. Yeah.
You know, because in the comic books, I mean, he and Captain were the best team you could
They were.
have.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did we not get a teamwork film?
Exactly.
Why did we not get a bunch of teamwork films? You could still be banking on Chris Evans's Cap, and you could still be banking on Anthony Mackie's Falcon.
Yeah.
I loved Falcon. Falcon was great.
Bucky needed to be the new Cap.
He did because that's actually what legitimately would
Also,
worked.
it doesn't
He's
diminish.
super strong.
Yeah, it doesn't diminish Falcon either, because he's a hero in his own right. And also, right, the comic book drawing and the way they portray him in the Marvel films, I think the way they portray him in Marvel films, especially his costume, is far more better physically wise, wise than the comics.
Yeah.
They were there. They were right there with that black character, right there. And what did they do? They weren't satisfied with that. Oh, we've got to make the black man the star of the film now. He's going to take.
You can't have a black character in a subordinate position.
It's like taking Shaft and making him James Bond. It's stupid.
We've
already got Shaft.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
By the way, we were talking about the last good thing that the BBC made as far as a show goes. I still think it's Luther.
Luther, yeah, it was.
Yeah, and that's Idris Elba, right?
Yeah, and
so
it's
just
created by a white guy. So there you go.
Yeah.
So there you go. So
they need to bring back. It's funny you talked about a black guy being James Bond, Ian. I said they need to revive Action Jackson.
Oh
bring that back.
How'd you like it?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's so funny. How you can launch into a conversation about something so great, like the film we talked about at the beginning, and you always end up like, now we're comparing all of the good things to all the bad things. I don't think there's any other way to go about these conversations anymore. It's like, these are the differences between what we used to have and what we have now, or what we used to make. I think
more people are looking backwards now than they are forwards, because they're like, this was when cinema was great. Now,
no, you know what it is.
So they're not looking forward to it.
Do you know what it is? It's the heroes. The heroes were manly and they were macho and stuff like that. When you look at something like Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings, right? The martial arts is good in it, but he's such a wimp, isn't he, that guy? He always gets kicked in the balls, or some woman is always beating him up and stuff like that. And it's just, that's the difference between Enter the Dragon and something like that.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, I mean, Bolo actually lost because of getting wrecked. So, I mean, there's that.
I guess.
But I'll tell you, I will tell you that they stopped doing that. When that was pointed out by so many of us, and I'm not, and not me specifically, I mean, like other bigger channels, but when that was pointed out that was being done constantly, where the gentlemen were always getting kicked in the midsection, you know, that
like the Loki series,
exactly, that just, if you've seen it since, right, they stopped doing it because it was just so egregious, it was so obvious.
Can I getting back to Enter the Dragon, can I just say that one of what I thought was just the most amazing moments in it is, I think, where the fight on the lawn, as who's the like big American guy in the yellow who was his bodyguard? What was his name?
Bolo.
No, Bolo was the big bulky guy. I'm talking about the one who killed
Bob Wall.
No, the one who killed his sister.
O'Hara. Yeah, Bob Wall. O'Hara. With a scar on his face. Yeah.
When O'Hara is jumping over him, and Bruce Lee is lying with his back on the ground, and Bruce Lee, leans up and kicks him in the groin as he's sailing over him. I thought that was just the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
It's very good. It's very good.
Well, and that, I still think that might be the best fight in the entire film. That O'Hara fight. When he breaks the bottles. I mean, basically, he's a desperate man at that point. Yeah, and I see that one scene, that end scene, is just so incredible, and the fact that he does get the retribution for the killing, or I guess she, deleted herself, but technically it was his fault.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, that is so amazing. I love, again, Gary, I know you're impressed. This is a regular man doing superhuman things without aid of wires.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I would say, look at the beauty of the martial arts today. Yes, you've got fast martial arts. I mean, Jackie Chan didn't want to copy Bruce Lee, so he concentrated on incredible stunts, and he's got a stunt team now, and and they perfected it, and to a point where nobody gets hurt now. They know exactly what to do. But when Enter the Dragon was out, look at the beauty of the choreograph that Bruce Lee does. Everything connects. You remember that shot. I ask you, can you remember anything that happened in the raid? I can't remember. I remember somebody got cut with a knife, but I can't tell you that whether somebody punched him well or whatever. But in Enter the Dragon, kick between the balls, smack in the face. You remember that bit where the O'Hara comes into the room and he knocks on the door, and Bruce Lee's doing his thing, and he's
working out.
He turns like that with his leg.
I know.
In the air.
Yeah, he just pivots on one foot. Yeah. He's very graceful. I mean, he's like
You just reminded me as well from my school days. You know, when Bruce Lee did like the facial expression when he kills O'Hara, and he's closing up on him, he's going, oh, all that. We had a lad at school, there was always that lad they were always pretty quiet, but they were dangerous, and even the teachers knew they were dangerous, and they always sat at the back and they never played by the rules. This lad was obsessed with Enter the Dragon, right? And one day the teacher was having a go at him for not doing his homework, and all of a sudden he started doing the Bruce Lee voices. And then picked up a table and threw it across the room.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's an inspiration.
Was he there the next day?
Oh,
I don't think so.
I think he was learning on his own.
Yeah, there you go.
That one.
Homeschooling is in his future.
But seriously, though, the martial arts in Enter the Dragon it's beautiful. That you look at that stuff and you just think, it's like, again, I would refer to Star Wars. It's like with the original Star Wars, because they shot it with all models. You can see the beauty of the ship flying, and you can see it going through. So look at the JJ version, because it's CGI. It's moving so fast, and the camera's going. No camera can do what the camera does because it's CGI. It just doesn't connect to you. It doesn't connect to you at all. Well, for me, I can't speak for everybody else.
I mean, I was going to say to everybody as well. I mean, some movies that we've got lined up in the next few weeks is, I've got Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So that's one of my favorites. Going to be good fun. And this jumped in while I was talking about it, but I want to do some Van Dammes as well. So it's going to happen. So
sport.
Yeah, exactly.
Cannonball Run. We have to do Cannonball Run.
Oh, that's a great movie.
It is a good movie.
Oh.
It's a good movie.
And,
not Cannonball Run 2.
No, not the second one. The first one. Yeah.
And it's funny you should say that.
I've seen that.
I was going to say Smokey and the Bandit as well.
Wait, which one?
Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, I love. Yeah.
That's another person we should talk about one day. Is Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds was one of the biggest stars in the entire world. My gosh, when I was growing up, anything he did turned to gold at one point, didn't it? And then suddenly everything disappeared for him. Yeah, crazy, right?
There's no way that you could have come from my loins. Buford T. Justice.
Yeah.
Buford T. Justice. Fearless law fighter.
No, but I mean, and then swerving back again to about like the movies and stuff, I thought that, I think that the intolerance that I mentioned, I think is going to start showing up in, people either not wanting to go to these movies that are still saturated with the woke, or their profits start failing. As culture knows, it all comes down to money. There you go. There's the Bob Peak art. It all comes down to money. So I think that when they start getting even more impacted financially, I think that's the only thing that's going to convince them. They're not all of a sudden going to see the light and go, you know what?
Yeah,
we really do see that this was a better way. They're not going to do that, not in a million years. But if they look at their bank book and say, we can't afford to do this anymore, I think that's when.
But you know what, culture, right? You know what I think? I think all of this leftist thing was boiling a very long time before people mention it. I'll give an example, right? What's that film with the Jewish guy with the beard. He laughs a lot. He's quite
Fiddler on a Roof.
no. The comedian. What's it? He played Green Hornet. Who's the guy who played Green Hornet in the
Oh,
latest?
yeah,
Seth
I know what you
Rogen.
mean.
Seth Rogen, right?
Yeah.
He did films with guys that weren't macho, that were just stoners,
Yeah.
right? Slowly they were deconstructing the male characters in movies. And
Yeah.
at that point in moment in time, there were loads of films about men that
Well,
were rubbish,
it-
but
it-
somehow they kind of got the girl at the end. Do you know what I
You're
mean?
you're speaking of the long game people, the incrementalists.
yeah.
And look, I kind of responded. Somebody today in the video I did about the UK got on me because I called Starmer Stalin. Okay, maybe that's not a funny
That's
thing.
not-
I thought it was. I thought it was funny.
It's funny.
I thought it
yeah,
was
it's good.
funny.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not the first time. I mean, I heard that said by a few folks in England.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm just going to say that, you know, I was thinking, okay, well, first of all, I'm pointing out that, you know, you should have freedom of speech. You know, you can call me a Yahtzee if you want to, whatever. You know, you can go around and call everybody the mustache man from the late 30s and 40s. You can certainly do that all.
Yeah.
But when I do it, I'm doing it in jest. It's humor. You know, and so but they reacted to that. And then somebody else said something that it's inspired me to say the following. And I'm just going to paraphrase myself very quickly. All of this has been coming for a long time, incrementally. We started out with these governments, you know, getting together in, you know, like these coalitions. Eventually, they became, you know, trade unions, which is what you're suffering from now.
Yeah.
You guys didn't fully complete Brexit, which is to your detriment, to be fair.
Yeah.
And you ended up with these globalists that just want one authoritarian rule over everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do they get there? Well, they do it by establishing policies that initially they're like, oh, you know what? We need to make plans for if there needs to be mass migration because of a crisis. So we're going to be this asylum possible by establishing this set of laws. It looks somewhat harmless to begin with, you know, and who wouldn't want to help people? That's how they get to you. That's appeal to emotion. That's why they always want you to have empathy and other baloney sausage there. It's not for your purposes. It's for their purposes to utilize and use.
Absolutely.
So that's the first step. Then the next step is to create said crisis or pretend there is one. And then start to act on that. So now you're changing societies wholesale in the name of not just the multiculturalism idea that you invented to also do this type of process, but bring people in who have no alignment with your existing beliefs. They have no alignment in your culture. They will not become a melting pot, which is what the U.S. became early on, was a melting pot of ideas, which gave us the culture that we have. But these people will not melt. They are going to stay ideologically entrenched, and they are going to add in that sense a huge burden on your society. We have that here in the States. You're having huge impacts because you're such a small country with you know limited resources, et cetera, et cetera. So when 1 million people are there in 1 year, it destroys your infrastructure, your safety systems, your safety nets. All these things change dramatically, and it's only made possible by this ideological alignment. Same thing happened here, but it took like 20 million people showing up in the span of years for us to be. We cannot have an entire state come in here every 4 years because that's the population of the state.
Insanity.
And then we get to the point, you know, where we have like Venezuelan gangs like taking over apartment houses, and the news is like, no big deal. Well, at least, you know, it's all right because it's only one. It's like,
but see, that's where they lost it, because we were talking about how like they got that little bit of a dent in their armor, right, or a bent of the armor when Elon bought Twitter, because you know free speech was back on the table. People could talk openly about these types of changes. But again, it's all done incrementally, and that's just one example, right? Just lay out a path to bring in people that are so ideologically opposed to the way that your society runs as it is, that you create divisiveness, which makes you easier to govern and control and so on. That happened in Hollywood long ago. You know, they shut it down initially, thanks to Ronald Reagan and others. But you know, once you lose people like that, who was NRA president for a while, old guy, Charlton Heston.
I know you mean.
Heston.
Yeah. So when you start to lose these people in Hollywood that are ideologically opposed to the collectivism that is always trying to force its way into Hollywood, because everybody understands that at a cultural level, that's how you try to drive these terribly destructive ideas in societies.
Yeah.
And so, you think back to the Mustache Man, to reference him again. What did he get rid of? He got rid of free speech in the form of getting rid of the comedians,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was just one of the cultural changes they made. Well, what are they trying to do in the UK?
Well,
I know. I mean, the UK. I mean, it's.
Sorry, guys. I just
No, you're absolutely
everything
right.
you
It's
said,
UK.
bravo to everything you said, because it was totally spot on. To me, it's kind of like, that old kind of cliche about, throw a frog into a pot of boiling water and it'll hop out. But you put a frog in some water, turn it up slowly to boiling, and it'll just sit there and cook. That's exactly everything you just said.
In the
That's
UK,
what's been happening.
In the UK, you're right. I mean, look, everybody knows what the problem is.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You go in, you talk to people at work, you talk to people, friends, you talk to people that you just bump into. Everyone knows what the issue is. But the fact is, they're stopping you from talking about what the issue is. That's the problem. And,
there's some people that are convinced, there are some people that actually are still convinced that this leftist ideology is okay. I was talking to my sister a couple of days ago. I was talking about Wicked, because my
she was perfectly. I just want to say she was perfectly lovely. Made an impression on me when she was in the States. So there you are.
Right. But anyway, yeah. Maria, my sister, and her daughter went to see Wicked, and they were talking about Wicked, and I just made a joke saying, "Well, that girl is not exactly good looking, is she?" And so they were like, "No, but she's got, she's all right. She's got beautiful eyes and blah blah blah." And I was thinking to myself, are they looking at the same person? You know what I mean? I just don't understand what they're saying, and I think it's the influence of that leftist kind of mentality.
Yes.
Look. Nothing against the woman. She's pretty probably a good actress, and she's good at what she does. But when it comes to looks, what society thinks that looks should be, she doesn't have it, right?
Well, I mean,
she just doesn't have it.
Are you sure? Because that ring in her nose makes her easier to be controlled.
Yeah, maybe.
And do you know one of my big hates lately as well, guys, is the fact that, and this is from the UK. I'm sure you're having it all over the place in the US as well. But when I go on to like a site like BBC iPlayer,
you do.
You'll go to watch a show from, say, the 70s or the 80s. I put an Only Fools and Horses on the other day, and it comes up with a disclaimer before you watch it, and it says the views in this may not represent this current era or along those lines, really. But yet, and I'm on my soapbox here with it. You go to Doctor Who in the 60th. You then have a section at the end of the 60th episode where they actually do the ending to resolve it as a trans ideology. They then do an extra episode, which is behind the scenes, and they spend a few minutes with the producer of the show and the trans actor talking about dead naming. And yet there's no disclaimer on that whatsoever when you're actually doing that, directing that at children. That is what is wrong at the moment,
with RTD hovering over him to make sure that he says all the right things.
Exactly right. And I think in a few years' time, I'd say within the next 10 years, hopefully common sense prevails, and there's things like that have got disclaimers on them.
I think the whole thing that Culture mentioned before, just really quickly before, about we've moved away from the classical depiction of what we call masculinity. With all the 80s movies. We have. I think that's going to be a fast turn back.
I hope so.
I think that's going to be a really quick knockoff effect of everybody saying, we've had it with all of this other stuff. Let's just get back to it. I think that will change pretty quickly.
But I do believe in diversity, though. I mean, not the way they're doing it, but I do believe that, when you're predicting someone on screen, whether it be film or TV show, that they should be predicted right? You shouldn't favor one over the other because of their sex or because of their sexuality or whatever. They should all be treated right within the constructs of the universe that you've created within the show and the film. But they're not doing that. They're basically, as I said, with Falcon, Captain Falcon, whatever his name is. They literally had a black superhero that was popular, that was cool, and they literally wanted to take that and do something else with it. But that's what I'm saying. I do believe in it, and I think, you know, going forward they should respect everything and everyone.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
They've had great characters of all ethnicities before, right?
Yeah.
And they seem to run away from them, which makes no sense because they want to change something into something else.
Yeah.
So like Luke Cage, like, okay, so I'm a big fan of the Netflix Marvel era, right? When they were making the Marvel era, Marvel stuff on their
Defenders,
on their thing. Yeah. So you look at that, and you look at Luke Cage, and you look at you look at Jessica, you look at Daredevil on there. Was like that was perfect. I'm like, holy cow, this is legitimately a street level Daredevil. This is what I wanted my whole life.
That corridor fight scene, just he's my number one character from
all the characters that Culture mentioned, they were all well rounded, well written. Although Jessica Jones, they did pull that out too much. It shouldn't have been so many episodes. They stretched that story out, and I know why they did that. But what's his name? Matt Murdock was well-rounded character. Jessica Jones was Luke Cage was definitely a well-rounded character. He was amazing.
I love Luke Cage. I'm like, why are we not doing more with this?
Exactly.
And so it speaks to that, right? And here's the thing: every time
not the way
do
they
this,
want it.
Right, but every time they do this, they're just proving that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can have a character that has Spider-Man like abilities, but you still can't get people to call him Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Culture, what is your hopes what's your hopes for the Born Again series?
A little more now than it was before. I think I think they might be able to pull it off. They literally they were almost 4 episodes into that shooting, and they stopped it and rewrote it because they wanted to make their television product something that would be appealing to people. But I think at the end of the day, I think Disney's come to the conclusion that the idea of pulling these characters out of their special rank and file instead of having characters established in that rank and file is probably a bad idea. So I think Daredevil could work because it was a televised product, was a television product originally under Netflix. I think they could make it work. But I'm going to tell you right now, I hated Echo.
Oh, you said I.
You know,
one episode was enough.
I binged it like everybody else in my sphere. I talked about it as nicely as I possibly could, and it was a struggle. There were some good tools there. There were some good things there, but all in all, originally they set out to destroy Daredevil. The same way they destroyed. Hang on,
Hawkeye.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you were on the same way.
I knew you were going to say.
Yeah, but that's what they were going to do with Daredevil with this next series, Born Again. Born Again would be, and now Born Again is Born Again and Born Again because now we're 3 iterations.
So I'm guessing you're not looking forward to Ironheart.
Ironheart's going to be a disaster waiting to happen.
They're going to dump that in one hit, aren't they?
They're going to have to. They're going to have to. Oh, by the way, Echo was so bad they created a special name brand for it to release it under Spotlight, Marvel Spotlight. They've never used that again.
Seriously.
And they've just replaced She-Hulk with Deadpool, haven't they, on the logo?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
and they pulled She-Hulk off the channel or something. What didn't I read that?
No, it's a poster. Just a poster.
Yeah. She's no longer featured.
But see, this is the real shame of things.
No twerking.
Isn't it? Yeah. You know, I think I said this to John, right? They could have made the female Doctor work. They could have done, and they could have made She-Hulk work as well if they just had respect in the character and they did it right. But they didn't do that.
Largely, they needed to create a courtroom drama rather than a girl power fest. Sleeping with Matt Murdock. This is why I was like, "Oh, this is so reprehensible." But it's they think that empowerment is just for a woman to nail as many dudes as possible.
Yeah,
that's not going to appeal to men.
The thing about
BBC was doing that with the show with so we had a show with Gillian Anderson Remember that
Oh,
was
The
called
Fall?
The Fall, right? And they were doing that before this really kicked in, and I recognized that fact because she was a detective. She slept with everyone, and she didn't give a shit about how they felt.
I'd watch
a terrible
show.
show.
Sleep with anybody. Yeah.
Oh, right. I thought it was awful.
Why is that? Why is okay? So instinctually, television executives look at men from their basest form, right? That guys want to sleep with everything that moves.
Yeah.
So their way of being girl power is to make women like that. That's
men,
the least appealing. That's the least appealing way to go at men. Men don't want that. Men want femininity, a level of chastity, and self-respect. That's female empowerment to a man.
Go back to the 40s, right, when we were talking about Sam Spade or the Maltese Falcon, and Humphrey Bogart was a pure man, right? He'd grab a woman and tell him what. But then you had strong women in there too. You had Lauren Bacall, who was a very cunning, very kind of, using her sexuality to make things move for her and stuff like that. And that, for me, is the right balance, because a woman cannot be a man. They cannot be physically as strong as a man. They can't do the things like sleep with, because that's not in their nature. And that's the reason why it doesn't work.
Ian, be careful now. I mean, they're going to show up at your door and come and arrest you. Right
Yeah. They're already flashing the lights outside, to be honest with you. I mean, on that, I mean, that'll be that's it for today.
It was a long one.
And I just want to say,
as the authorities show up for Ian, it's time to kind of wrap things
stood
up.
Right there. But I wanted
say goodbye.
I want to say thanks, guys, for this one. Culture, really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And could just let us know what you've also in a minute. Let us know where you can be found.
I kind of make it obvious up here, but it's also down here. You can find me seriously. Everything that I do is under Culture Casino for the most part, other than That Game Place, which is the game channel. But that's a partnership with folks at That Park Place. So, I love what I do. I retired to do less, and I'm doing way more. It's in the video form in some form or fashion. It's producing shows like Mr. H Reviews, and so you can find me on a lot of channels. I'd be surprised that you can't find me somewhere than if you could, because it seems like I have many doppelgangers as well. But I enjoy what I do. I do check me out, Culture Casino. I do videos and live streams every day. And I love what I do, and I love being here. This was a lot of fun. We have well-informed humans here, and I enjoy that.
Culture is the Will Ferrell of the internet. Anywhere, you don't have to look far to find him.
That's a compliment. I thought I was scared you were going to call me Pedro Pascal.
No. It's kind of like one of the actors who's like every month or every week you see him in a new movie. It's like culture is omnipresent, but the internet is better for culture's omnipresence.
You know what? You know what, Culture? I can literally call you my friend. I mean, we go back way, don't we? Go back way since the pandemic, don't we?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say we go back 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no need for Ian forever. In fact, he's one of my favorites, and the chance I got to meet him in person was just
it was great,
incredible.
It was incredible.
It was a little sweaty, but it was good.
It was.
All right, TMI, guys. TMI.
No. The meeting location, we were meeting in the dead of summer in Texas. It was, and there was zero air conditioning in the venue.
It was, man. It was awesome. It was awesome. Everybody was there from was it Gary?
Nerdrotic
to
FNT was there. I was there.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun,
and Ian as well. Where tell us about Rebecca Gold as well.
Rebecca Gold trailer is going to be dropping soon in the next 2 weeks' time, hopefully. It's only 1 minute and 11 seconds long, but it will give you a taste. I'm trying to encourage people to actually donate money, because I need money to finish it. So it'll be dropping soon, and once it drops, I hope everybody will share it, and so I can finish the damn thing. But you can see season 1. It's on Rebecca Gold channel. It's on the channel. So,
and looking forward to seeing it, mate. Yeah, definitely. And Gary, what about you? Where else can you be found
You
when you're
can
not on this
find me
wonderful
on
channel?
Facebook. You can find me on this channel. You can find me occasionally on Type 40 or the Spacebook. And yeah.
Yeah. Cool. But thanks for joining us, everyone. If you want to check out some of our other videos, we've got movie playlists there. And we've also done some reviews if you're into it. Sort of
The Close Encounters one is pretty good. Watch the Close
Yeah,
Encounters
that
one.
is.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
fun.
And,
doing
and
it.
tune in next week, because John will be doing a live demonstration of chopping through the 6 boards, just like an Enter the Dragon. We won't set him on fire. Well, we won't do that to him, but we will have him try to chop through the boards, and we'll see how that turns out.
And
So
but
tune
I'm
in
not
next week
taking
for
my
that.
top off because I can't see my
No,
pecs.
please don't.
But until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.